Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to episode 59 of the X Button Gaming Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I'm just going to do a real quick spoiler warning that as we get into the episode, we will be talking spoilers. So if you haven't played the game yet and plan on it or haven't finished it, maybe listen to this episode later. But outside of that, I have a couple of new guests with me here today. I have Allie here with me.
Hello.
Hey, Allie, thanks for joining. Big Final Fantasy fan, and she even came dressed for the occasion a little bit.
A tiny bit. I could have done it more.
No, you did good. I like it. And then I have my friend Gary here.
Hola.
Good day, Gary. Gary Day. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Chris, and thank you for giving me an outlet for catharsis on a game that I've been bottling up inside for way too long.
I think that goes for all three of us. As we'll get into, this game definitely hit home for me as well. So, but before we get into the main topic and start talking about the game, because it's both of your first time on the episode, we're going to take a couple minutes and just give the audience an opportunity to get to know you both a little bit better. So I'm going to start with Allie, and every time I have a new guest, I ask a few of the same questions. I change them a little bit maybe, but I'm going to ask you those same questions just to give the audience a chance to get to know you, and me as well, because I've only met a few times prior to this. So to start out, Allie, what's your earliest gaming memory?
All right. So my earliest memory is watching my dad play games. I have a fond memory of watching him play through the Ratchet and Clank series.
Oh, nice.
That I got to stay up late past my bedtime to see the end of it. But my personal experience with video gaming started in a very girly way. I played Barbie Horse Adventures on my PC.
Oh, nice.
That was where it all started.
And then now look where we are.
Yep. Then I graduated to Little Big Planet, and then eventually the Zelda series. Those was kind of my stepping stones into gaming.
That's a pretty good natural transition there from one series to the next. Like, it gradually got harder and harder. No, it's especially nice, too. Like, the memories with your parents, like, being able to, like, pinpoint, like, the fondness of watching your parents or playing a game with your parents, like, at a young age is definitely fun. The Ratchet and Clank games are great.
I loved those.
I've still never played the originals.
I didn't do anything before the PS3. My first one was kind of Tools of Destruction. So.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I haven't played... I actually, the first time I ever played the Ratchet and Clank series was with not a remake. It was like
2016
the 2016 reissue, like when they started fresh.
Which that one is actually my least favorite of everything that I've played.
Yeah,
So.
I liked it enough to be excited for the sequel. What was it called?
Rift Apart.
Rift Apart, which I liked Rift Apart, but yeah, I need to go back and play all the other games because
Crack in Time is my favorite. If you need a recommendation.
Yeah, and that was one of the PS3 ones, right?
Yeah.
What were the PS3? It was Tools of Destruction, Crack in Time.
Well, that was the Future trilogy, Tools of Destruction. Then there was kind of like a little mid one, but it was short. The next installment was Crack in Time, and then I believe Into the Nexus was the last one in that.
That sounds familiar. It had like a purple cover.
Yeah.
Then there was like a 4-player one, right? But
Yes, which is fun if you have friends to play with, but if you're just talking about a standalone playing by yourself, I think it has less of a draw than the others.
yeah, that makes sense.
I definitely had a lot of fun game nights playing it with other people.
Yeah, it's on my like gaming bucket list to go back and play that series, especially because I've always considered myself a Sony fan. But there's some of those early series I've never played, like Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter. I just played the first Jak and Daxter in the last year. I never played the Sly Cooper games. I don't know why. I know it was mainly because I was really into RPGs when they were all coming out, so I was only really playing RPGs. But I love platformers, so it's a shame that I haven't gone back to play them yet. Okay, so Allie, what are some of your other hobbies? So obviously you're into gaming, but what else do you like to do?
Yeah, I'm an artist, so I spend, most of my limited free time drawing in some form or another. I like to do digital art, and then I also have started painting with gouache lately.
Painting with what?
It's called gouache. It's a specific kind of paint. It's sort of like a mixture of watercolors and acrylics, if you know what those are. So it gives you a little bit more of a fluid style to work with, like watercolors, but it's more opaque, so it's forgiving.
Well, that's cool. I'm so far away from being talented at art. Like, I can't draw a stick figure. I mean, I can, but they aren't very good.
Yeah, no, it's a fun outlet for me.
Yeah.
Then I guess my other hobby, I don't know if hobby is the right word for it, but I've been learning Japanese for the last few years.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of my time studying that and trying to get better.
No, that's awesome. And you just went to Japan in the last year, right?
Yeah, last fall.
Yeah.
It was
How
amazing.
was that, having been trying to learn the language and everything? Was it super like informative and
Yes, it helped my brain work with the Japanese that I knew faster, although I also had a bit of a comparison for how far I need to go before I can even consider myself slightly proficient.
I can only imagine. I don't know another language, but if I was to learn one, Japanese would be at the top of the list of what I want to. But man, I respect anybody who can take the time to learn another language, especially later in life. You know, because when you're a kid, it's apparently easier. I don't know, I didn't learn one, but
Well, it really helps if you can immerse yourself in the culture. So with the games that you like to play, it probably would give you extra incentive over other languages. Just,
Yeah.
it's available for you to expose yourself to.
yeah. And I mean, I like, obviously, the games. I like anime. Like, it seems like it would be the easiest for me to dive into, but it's intimidating. I'm 36 now, and the amount of free time I have is more limited than it used to be, but no, that's good. That's awesome. That's awesome that you're learning it, and also that you're able to go to Japan and kind of see the culture and stuff that you've probably appreciated for such a long time in person.
Yeah, it was really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Let's tail back to the art a little bit too. So do you have like a specific type of topic? I don't know if that's the right word, but like that you like to draw about, or?
I mean, it's usually whatever I'm into at the moment, just because since it is a hobby for me, a de-stressor, if I'm into a particular game or something, I'll just draw the characters from that because it's less thought power than having to
Yeah.
be 100% creative on my own.
No, that makes perfect sense. And that's kind of, I mean, if it's a hobby, then yeah, that's where most artists seem to like start too, is painting or drawing or whatever based off of what they like.
Yeah, and in my opinion, the reason that is because, coming up with a design for a character or an environment or whatever subject you're wanting to draw, it's very difficult to like pull that out of your head. It's easier to work from a reference. So if you're the kind of person who likes going outside and drawing a stranger in a coffee shop, that's one way to do it. But if you're a person more like me, you might have more emotional attachment to a character that's already been designed by someone who's good at it. And then you have that reference to work from, so it saves you some creative energy. Yeah, have a better starting point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's super cool. And and that makes perfect sense too. I've even heard that with like voice acting, which I know might be a kind of a strange reference, but it's with voice acting, they say like, yes, most people start doing a Mickey Mouse or a Donald Duck impression, but that's just the starting point to get to their own sounds and their own voice acting, individualism.
I mean, I think that's true of everything ever. I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube series Everything's a Remix. Oh, I highly recommend it, especially the episode on Star Wars, but it just kind of shows how everything we do is not 100% original. We are combining things that we like from everywhere.
Oh, for sure.
And creating something new out of something old. So, whether it comes to art or voice acting, you've always got to have a jumping point. It's not just from you.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, just about every story ever originates with the good versus evil concept, which, I mean, that's literally the oldest tale in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goes to the beginning of time. So, no, that's cool. I mean, it sounds like you have some good hobbies, and it's nice to hear like where you're going with them. If you have any art that you'd like to share too, to put on the Instagram post or anything, feel free.
I do have an art Instagram, if it's not too much of a plug.
No, for sure.
It's Allywaia Art, ALLYWAIA _art.
Awesome. Yeah, and at the end I'll have you plug it again.
Okay.
But yeah, and then I'll put if you remember to send me the I'll add it to the notes on when I post about the episode.
I will apologize for anyone looking it up. I haven't had as much time lately to draw things worthy of posting, so it's a little bit few and far between, but I'm hoping to start uploading more frequently.
No, I understand. No, that's cool. We'll keep it up. So it'll be fun to see it too. I've seen some of your art, I think, when you started following me. I think I looked at some of it, but I'll have to check it out again too. Okay, so last question. Favorite games of all time? 1, 3, 5, I don't care. Just what are some of your favorite games of all time?
All right, I'll name my number one, and then the rest of them are kind of a toss-up depending on what mood I'm in. Number one, Amori.
Oh, okay.
I believe you've played it?
I have, yeah.
Okay, that one is, well, I love literary analysis in all forms, like movies, books, video games. I think it's another form of expressing stories. Mm-hmm. And Amori is the one that I would go to say, like, this is artwork. Mm-hmm. It delivers a story, a very emotional story, in a way that only the gaming medium could. And when you finish it, you walk away thinking about it for days afterwards.
Oh,
and
for sure.
I could gush about it for the next few hours if you didn't stop me. So
yeah, no, fantastic game, and it really. I thought I knew what was going to have happened by the end,
there's no
and I
way
was
anyone
completely
will
off.
ever know.
Yeah, and not a lot of things. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but not a lot of things make me like stop and be like, "Holy crap!" And like that is literally. I literally had a moment that it happens once in a while, very rarely, where I set the controller down and I was just like I just had to like think for a while. Like I had to take in what had just happened.
No, I'm sad that it's not better known than it is. I feel like it's still one of the lesser known indie titles.
Yeah.
But I think everyone should play it, once they hit a certain point in their life, because I don't know, it's so mind opening for certain aspects of being alive.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I know it might touch on some points that might be triggering for some people, but for the most part, it was very I don't know how to word what I'm trying to say. It very touching.
Yeah.
Like it really hit all the right notes. Like
it's hard to put into words unless you've played it, especially if you're trying to avoid spoilers.
Yeah. Like
There's
that's
so
exactly
much
it.
There.
But and all the things they did along the game too, like I really like it was a really well done RPG too.
Yeah.
Like
every aspect of it, even the combat system was like intentionally connected to the story they were trying to tell.
It was super smart.
Yeah, that's one game that I've heard a lot of praise of and have even like seen people talk about it to a certain extent. I've avoided spoilers somehow, despite the fact that it's been out for it's a few years now or something like that.
Well, then you should play it right away before something gets ruined for you.
Yeah, right now. I just bought a Switch and start playing. No, but no, that is one game that like, because it's an RPG, right? Technically,
yeah,
or
it's
in
kind
the
of
format.
like an RPG Maker classic format. I mean, it looks pretty copy-paste if you've played others in the genre.
It's very unique, though.
Yeah.
Right.
The way it delivers all of the same things that you would normally think you've got figured out.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn, but it's also very simple. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it's not... You have to figure out the battle system, but once you figure it out, it all makes sense. And I can't say too much about it without like spoiling the battle system, which I feel like is kind of its own spoiler in a way.
I
but
mean, it's so early in the game that it's not even quite a spoiler, but...
Well, I know it has a lot to do with... I know a lot of people have mentioned, like, its commentary on, like, mental health and other things like that, too.
Yeah,
and
it's
things
amazing.
of that nature. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's definitely something I want to try and play. It's just... I know somewhat of the subject matter that it deals with, and it's a little heavy. It's like
very
gotta be in the
heavy.
right mindset to play it.
Yeah, it is very heavy subject matter, but for the most part, there's multiple endings, but the good ending is pretty much, you're almost guaranteed to get it the first playthrough, unless you're a very unconventional gamer who takes really weird choices. It's hard to get off that main path the first time you go through it. And that good ending, even though it's going to deal with all those heavy topics, it's cathartic. Is the best word I can use for it. Like, you don't walk away thinking like, oh, well, that was just a sad ending and that makes me think life sucks. It's like teaching you how to process that negativity and then move on.
Yeah. There's definitely ways that they can present what could be seen as very negative story matter. And they did a good job of not necessarily, not glorifying it, but making it real and making it like... kind of helping you understand how you kind of have to deal with things sometimes when in life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I was like, this is artwork, because, if you read a book or watch a movie, you're seeing a story or experiencing an emotion through another character's eyes. But when you're playing a game, you are the main character. I mean, even though there's that slight separation of, oh, they have a different name than me, you more or less are experiencing what that character is supposed to be feeling. So when you're dealing with a game on subject matter like anxiety and fear, like, when they're able to artistically make that main character, and by extension you, feel that emotion, that's something that only a game can do.
And it hit home for me because I deal with, it's gotten a little bit better, but I deal with really bad anxiety. And like, it's nice, like, even though me and the main character have very little in common at the point I am in my life now, because he's, a teenager and I'm an adult, but it's still like a lot of what happened still felt very real, and I was able to relate to it very closely, and that's pretty, like, that's not something every game can do, and they did a really good job at it.
Yeah.
And if you want to, I have it on PS4 and you can borrow it.
Yeah, I'd have to kind of This is a funny aside. I'd have to dig out my PS4 to play it if I was going to do that.
It'll play on PS5. You have a PS5, or is it?
I do have a PS5, but something happened when I initially got it on launch day, and I've not been able to play any PS4 games on it.
Really?
It is a strange thing. I think it happened when I was trying to data transfer between my PS4 to my PS5. Something, I think it was either power tripped in the house or something like that, but it did something to the console itself, and I asked Sony about it. They're like, yeah, it's a CE error. It's the console error itself. You can't play for whatever reason. And it's like, yeah, you could send it in, but at this point I'm just waiting to pull the trigger on like the factory reset to try and fix the problem, but I'm like, I don't want to have to download all those games again. So I'm like, yeah, I might just, I'll keep my PS4 for not just collector reasons, but also just like so I can play my PS4 games. So,
Does that mean you haven't played anything that's come out on the PS5 since it launched?
No, I've played stuff on the PS5 because it works.
PS5 just in the PS5 games. It's the PS4 games you haven't.
It's the PS4 games that I can't play, but the PS5 I've been able to play everything that's come out.
Okay, good. I was like, that's a pretty long gap of not having played any new games.
Yeah,
but I have this new console.
But somehow I'm able to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Oh yeah. Hold up.
I got the PC port early, guys. I'm just kidding. No, yeah, that's just a funny aside of the quirkiness, I guess, of my game collection, and it. That original PS5 is unique now because it's the only not backwards compatible PS5 out there on the market.
You should try to sell it. It's a nice variant.
Yeah, they're variants.
Oh man! So what other favorite games? Omari's a good first.
Okay. Other than that, honorable mentions are Fire Emblem Three Houses. That's another one of those deep story games.
Yeah, great game.
And then I just love the Zelda series in general and the Kingdom Hearts series, and then obviously Final Fantasy VII. I loved the original, and I've been enjoying all of the remakes, and I didn't get to play it on PSP, but Crisis Core I played the remake, so
yeah, it's pretty close to one-to-one remake.
That whole universe, I've appreciated pretty much every story that's come out of it so far.
Yeah, I'm 100% there with you, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So, well, thank you for sharing that. Let's go on to Gary. So same questions to you, Gary. What's your earliest gaming memory that you can remember, why it would be your earliest gaming memory?
I think so. So I have I had two in mind when you sent me these questions. It's really hard for me to pick a certain one because I feel like video games have kind of been part of my life from the very beginning. My dad was a pretty big gamer, so mainly in the arcade scene and during the 90s and stuff like that. But probably one of my earliest memories just in general is of I was about 3 years old and we were living in a rental house not too far from where we actually live now. And we had a roommate that was one of my dad's friends. He owned a PS1 at the time. And I remember 3-year-old me going down the stairs of this rental house and then going into kind of like they're these guys are in their 20s. They kind of have their own man cave sort of deal. My dad's got like his workout stuff and all that. And then on the CRT TV, there's the PlayStation 1 and it's hooked up and they're playing Star Wars Dark Forces for the PlayStation 1 on that. And I remember Star Wars was kind of something that was just also part of my childhood. So seeing them like, oh my gosh, like I've never seen it like this before. This is so cool.
I can play it.
Oh my gosh, he's playing as a stormtrooper. He's not, but you know, you think
that's
that
how
as
you
a kid.
Perceived it. Yeah.
I remember thinking right then, I really, whatever happens, I've got to play that game or something like that. And then another one.
So real quick, have you played the game?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I own it on PC and I have that same PlayStation and that same copy of Dark Forces.
Oh, nice.
It belonged to the roommate, but we were good friends, and during like the Xbox PlayStation 2 era, he eventually ended up giving me his PS1 and that game along with it. I'm like, I can finally play this. My dad's like, you're 9, the game's rated teen, no, you can't play it. I'm like, no!
You gotta wait, boy.
I snuck a playthrough in there every once in a while. I was not the not the most obedient
little
child.
Rebel.
Yeah.
Where did he learn that from?
The Rebel Alliance, yes. No, and there's one other memory that I remember. It was about a year later we ended up moving into the house where we are now. And my dad he had a Sega Genesis. So a lot of my early memories are on that console. And I remember when I was old enough to kind of hold a controller, my dad's like, okay, I will have you play this game with me. And he again, he's big into the arcade scene. So what he puts in Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. And he has like 4-year-old me trying to like
button combos,
desperately try to learn Vega in like often considered like the least good port of Street Fighter 2.
This sounds like a punishment.
It sounds like it. It does sound like
Your dad just wanted to destroy you and remind you who was boss.
Vega is not an easy character to learn. I just like, he looks like Wolverine. I want to play him. But no, like that game is pretty nostalgic for me too, for those reasons. So me and my dad would play kind of well into the night at that point too. Much to my mom's dismay, she's like, please don't teach him Street Fighter 2. He's so impressionable. He's going to try this on the playground.
I can see little Gary out there with forks and things.
You just hear like Spanish music playing all this for no reason. It's like, okay, yeah, no, those are some of my earliest ones. And like from that point on, I think gaming has just kind of been a part of like growing up, essentially. Different consoles, different generations. I was always a last generation person, so it's that thing when you don't have a whole lot of money, you
get what you can get.
You get what you can get. And so yeah, I have a deep appreciation for older games and stuff like that. I play a lot of new stuff now though, but yeah, I still love the retro games for a lot.
Sure. So Street Fighter, do you still play it?
Yeah, not as much. But I am because of those early gaming experiences, I have a bit of an affinity towards the fighting game genre in general. I'm not good at any of the games. Don't ask me to go to like a pro tournament or anything like that. I'll be squashed immediately. I'm like a fly on the wall. Like, I really like those combos and those colors are great and the music's great.
How about a friendly tournament?
A friendly tournament, like I can still have lots of fun. I haven't played the latest Street Fighter 6. It's on my... I've got to get to it because they're just ending the first season now with Akuma coming out. And so that's like a really pivotal character. And I'm like, okay, I really want to get to that, but I'm saving my money so I can actually purchase it, hopefully on sale. Capcom games do that a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of... I could talk a lot about fighting games and my love of them despite not being good. So
I can respect that.
I forgot to mention Smash Bros. Is one of my favorites. So is that one you like as well?
Oh, I think Smash Brothers, especially Ultimate, has the best roster of any fighting game. I honestly, that might be a bit contentious for fighting game aficionados. Marvel 2 is also up there, but like Ultimate, I think, just had the greatest hype around any game.
I think it's just really accessible for any genre of gamers. That's the wrong word I'm looking for, but you can have an 8-year-old playing it and a 4-year-old, and there's no discrepancy in whether it interests you.
Yeah, it's an easier pick up and play fighting game than most, but it does have a very high ceiling as far as the mastery of it. But
you can start with button mashing, but when you start trying to master your back air with Joker, then you enter a new world.
'Cause I'm not a fighting game fan, really. Like I appreciate them, but I suck at all of them. Other than Smash Bros is the only one I've ever been somewhat good at, and that I say that very lightly because there's always plenty of people in any group that can beat me.
I don't know.
Just because you have Jimmy, who's always trying to beat the crap out of all of us.
Yeah.
Oh, he does too.
He tries. Yeah, he succeeds.
I mean,
and then he laughs, and then I get mad.
I've beaten him. He remembers it.
Let's talk about that more.
Yeah.
James can't defend himself here.
You just have a James podcast where we're just talking about James memories.
I could go all day.
He's here in spirit.
You guys have no idea. James doesn't want me to do a James podcast. Keep in mind, guys, I've known him since we were 5.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The longest podcast episode ever.
Oh man, so no good early memories. Did you play the Dark Forces remaster that they just released?
I haven't played the remaster. I did play the PC port of the game because I learned very quickly that the PlayStation 1 port of the game is probably like the worst port to play.
Yeah, it's cool that it exists, but it's definitely not a great port.
The frames are just awful, and not only that, it was made during the time when the PlayStation didn't have a DualShock.
Yeah,
so it was
pre-analog.
made with the same like wishbone thing. So it was trying to play it that way is not good. So,
yeah, no, it hasn't aged well.
No, but playing it on PC, you have of course mouse controls and everything's a lot better, a lot more smooth. I have not played the remaster. I know Aspire did that, and a lot of people say that that's one of the best ones. I did look at it recently, and I'm like, I might go for another playthrough of the game, but yeah, it's enjoyable. Kyle Katarn is still like one of my favorite expanded universe characters, so yeah.
I love Kyle Katarn. The Dark Forces.
The retro Star Wars games is not something I've delved into yet, but I love Star Wars in general, so I want to do that sometime soon.
The Dark Forces series is a really good one. A lot of people will just swear their life on Jedi Academy, which is the last one, because there's a lot of like Legends crossover and stuff like that. Like
they really get into the books in Jedi Academy a lot. Yeah,
so if you're a fan of any of like I'd say like Thrawn trilogy or anything else like that in the expanded universe, it's a good go back to and play. Not all of them are currently available through remaster, which is kind of a bummer, but on PC you can get all of them pretty cheap usually during sales. So
yeah, they've made a lot of them more accessible, but I will say, not that I know you extremely well, but what I know of you, like I feel like the Knights of the Old Republic games, especially the first one, would be up your alley.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. But that's the one they're remaking right now, right?
Supposedly.
It's the on and off remake, yeah.
It's floating around somewhere in the void.
It's supposed to be being remade. We'll see. The last we heard was that it's still in development, so that's good.
I'll have to go back and do it, because that's what I did with Final Fantasy VII. I saw that they were doing a remake, and so I played the original first.
Mm-hmm. I think it's worth it. The Knights of the Old Republic, I've never sat down and done like a true like top 10, top 20 like of my favorite games of all time. But if I did, Knights of the Old Republic would be high. Like I know it would rank somewhere in the top 10 probably. It's fantastic. Like as far as Star Wars, it's one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars media, period. So definitely worth playing.
I mean, I haven't played it, and I already know the name Revan, so it's pretty iconic as far as non-canon stuff goes.
Exactly.
People are very vocal about their love for Old Republic.
I actually know someone who named their son Revan. So
really,
see, now that sounds like a cool person. I know somebody who named their daughter Mara Jade, but then I don't know them that well. But I was told that they claimed they didn't know that was a Star Wars character. But I was like, how do you not know?
That's like, very specific.
Yeah.
I was like, how is that?
Was it first name Mara, middle name Jade, or something like that? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like, that's pretty darn specific. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they just heard it and liked it, but I like to believe that they're just lying and they're really a huge Star Wars fan.
I could see like Mara by itself being like, okay, that works. But anybody, like if they're teachers or anything, wherever like Star Wars fans, they'd be like, okay, give them a little bit of a look. Like,
the only way I could believe that is if like a super big Star Wars fan somehow conned them into doing it unknowingly.
You know what's a beautiful name? Mara Jade.
Just keep saying it until they do.
Yeah. It just rolls right off the tongue.
You know what, babe? I really love the name Mara Jade.
I think he has a point.
All right, Gary. What other hobbies you got? What are some of your other favorite hobbies outside of gaming?
Okay, so outside of gaming, it kind of a little bit to keep on the whole like creative aspect. One of the things I really like as far as like media to consume, I really like reading. So I read a lot of books and manga and stuff. I've gotten a lot into audiobooks because I have a job where there's a lot of silence and I don't necessarily need to hear that silence. So over the past few years, I've delved really deep into like epic fantasy books and things of that nature in audio formats. And I've always been a big proponent of stories, and it kickstarted actually like a long-held hobby, now that I think about it, of writing. Writing is a hobby that I really love. So telling stories and creating worlds and stuff like that. That's something that I really love to do. It kind of gets me to focus on something else. Like, yeah, it's a sort of an escape a little bit, but I enjoy trying to come up with basically, I'd say almost like my own version of something that I enjoy. And that's gone through like different iterations and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. What we have here is now we have somebody that can make the story for a game and do the art for a game.
That's a lot of pressure.
Just need somebody to program it now.
Yeah, now Chris just needs to learn C++ and JavaScript. So
I'll just advertise it.
You got a podcast, yeah.
That's all I'm good for. I'll play it and advertise it.
Yeah. No, one of the things about my hobby is within like the last year or two, I was working on an actual novel project that I was working on. I think it's not good enough or at the right length that it could be like a debut, because they say debuts need to be somewhere between it's like 70,000 to 90,000 words or something, and my current manuscript is like nearing 170,000 words or something like that, which is way too big for somebody who's new. But yeah, I'm still not finished with it.
Have you read Lord of the Rings? I think you can go as many words as you want.
Yeah, Tolkien kind of has a little bit of he kind of has a little bit of a leg up on most new people. I mean, his first thing was redoing the Beowulf mythos and stuff like that too. So sorry, I'm getting even more nerdy now into books and stuff.
Wow, we got a real nerd here.
A real nerd.
Oh wait, no, that's me too. So. No, that's pretty impressive though, man. Like, I can't even imagine writing a short story, let alone being able to come up with enough. When I read books, I always wonder to myself, like, how do they the amount of detail it takes to world build and to like give the detail of a character with, like, I love video games because I love seeing all that.
Yeah.
But I also like reading because I can imagine, I have a decent imagination too. But the difference between the two is when you're reading, you have to use your imagination, but a good writer is able to help you get there. And that's a talent, man.
It's incredible when you have like an author who's able to describe something in enough detail where you can have literally thousands of readers read the same thing, and then they go and they make like art or something of it, and they're all kind of uniform or within the same line of thought. Like, you're taking a mental picture that you have and translating it to somebody else, and they're like, oh yeah, I could see what that kind of looks like. There's an art to it. I get down on myself about art and stuff like that all the time, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm really that great at it, but a lot of people have liked when I've cleaned up stuff that I've written, and they're like, oh, I like that or something. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not completely terrible.
No, that's awesome.
I think the idea, sometimes the world building gets so meticulous, that's the word I'm looking for, where it's like you lose the story and all the details.
Yeah.
So there's like a balance between being able to craft something that gives you a good mental picture without boring the reader. So if you are making things that people are praising, you probably struck that balance.
Yeah, probably. I think the thing with world building, because authors talk about it, there's one author, my favorite author is Brandon Sanderson, if you've ever heard of him, maybe not, but he's got his fantasy series, and he also has like tutorials on YouTube, especially about like what is his philosophy on writing and things of that nature, and like how does somebody go about this. He calls it world builder syndrome, which Tolkien is probably the most popular I guess participant in that, because I think quite famously it took him like 40 something years from the time of starting his writings on Middle Earth to actually releasing the Lord of the Rings trilogy of books. So most people are not Tolkien. Most people do not have like that sort of amount of time. So it's like, if you have a story, get it to the point where it's like you have enough there where people are like, okay, he's built so much into this one thing, he's probably done the rest as well. You kind of trick people a little bit. You're like, haha, it's well developed, the whole world is like this, and you're like, oh, please don't look at all the like holes that clearly are there. But yeah, something along those lines. But yeah, that's definitely what I ended up doing with this project. I started it for like something called NaNoWriMo, which is a National Novel Writing Month. So I forced myself to like, you only have so much time to world build, so get to writing. And so that's what I ended up doing. And I'm kind of stuck a little bit towards the end, but I'm hoping to try and just push it just so I can get it finished, essentially.
Yeah. Well, I think you should do that. I think you should continue to push, and I think we're all our own worst enemy, so don't get down on yourself and just keep going. I think it would be cool to be able to read what you wrote at some point.
Yeah, it definitely needs some cleanup work. I'll say that. The first chapter alone makes me kind of cringe a little bit, but when you're working so long on one thing, you kind of end up growing a little bit with it. I think any artist would kind of agree with that, I feel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's not the same thing, but I'm 68 plus episodes into this podcast now, and every time I listen back, I still cringe at everything about myself. so I mean, I think sometimes that's normal, but
we all start from somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, they say with art, it's like Michelangelo. He would pull the sculptures out of the piece of marble that he started with. Mm-hmm. So when you're creating something, don't expect it to be perfect. You have to start with a hunk of rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Refine it.
Yep. I think you're on the right path. So keep it up.
I'll try to.
All right, last question for you, Gary. What are your favorite games of all time?
Oh, boy. So I had to kind of... This is a question that somebody will ask you if they're like, oh, you're into video games? What's your favorite game of all time? And I'm like, oh, that's a loaded question. That is a really loaded question because I've played a lot of them. But I kind of narrowed it down to 5. So if I'm going in like ascending order, number 5 I think is I really like Legend of Zelda, but there's one Zelda game in particular that's like my favorite of them, and I feel like this might be a bit of a hot take because most people when they think of Zelda games they think of maybe Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, especially now with like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. People are like, these games are amazing, and I agree, but none of them have necessarily come to the same emotional feeling as Twilight Princess. For me, Twilight Princess is my favorite Zelda game of all time, mainly because I love the characters, the grand scale of epicness as it goes along. It's a lot more structured. It's not as open and free as Breath of the Wild, but I really love a lot of the characterization. Oddly enough, it's probably has like the worst Princess Zelda, but it has the best companion in the entire series.
Yeah. Midna's pretty great.
But I also feel like she's kind of the most iconic. If you don't know anything about Zelda and you picture her, that's probably what pops in your head.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's very true, actually.
Yeah, it's funny because some people kind of will call Twilight Princess a little like grim, dark, ugly, a little bit, because it was almost in response to Wind Waker being a little too cutesy. And they're like, okay, well, let's go the other direction now. But also kind of like poke a little at you guys because you guys didn't appreciate Wind Waker when it came out. So it's like,
we just need time. We love all of them.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's my favorite Zelda. 4th one is a Final Fantasy title. It's probably the one I have the most time gameplay in, other than like one other video game that I have. It's Final Fantasy 14, the online MMO. That game is pretty much like the nexus of Final Fantasy because it has references to pretty much all of them, even within its main story, which kind of got me a little bit into the series. I'll probably talk about that a little bit more, but it's got some of my favorite characters, some of my favorite music. It's made me very much a fan of the developer, Creative Business Unit 3, so yeah.
Yeah, 14 is a lot of fun. I put a lot of time into it in a very short period of time, and then I haven't gone back to it, but I want to because there's so much to do in that game.
Does it have some gacha elements?
No, it's very traditional MMO. So if you think of World of Warcraft subscription-based model, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the copy pasta of the like. Have you heard of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy 14? It has a free trial. And the free trial has actually been expanded from like a year or two ago to now include the base game with the first 2 expansions. And each expansion is basically a game's worth of content onto itself. So it's like you can play it for free up to level 70. And then I think Shadowbringers and Endwalker you have to purchase. You have to purchase those expansions separately, and there's also the subscription fee on top of that. So it's not a gacha system. It does have its own microtransactions and stuff like that, but not
more predictable.
Yeah, it's more predictable, and you really stick with like your own custom created character and your own like Final Fantasy story. A little bit.
That makes me want to try it a little more, because I've seen it and I've always thought it looked cool, but I was playing Genshin Impact at the time, and I'm like, I can only afford to have one gacha game at a time.
Yeah, no, it's not a gacha.
Yeah,
so.
you pay your $15 a month, but after that, you don't really feel a push to spend money, like outside of that monthly payment. Yeah, I mean, if you want to rush,
not that much. I mean, it's been going for years and years, and if you buy one game that you play for 40 hours, you'll pay $70 on a PlayStation.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth it. It's, if you put the time into that kind of a game, like $15 a month. No, you never feel forced to pay more. You can if you want to speed something up for yourself, but everything is completely obtainable. Like I never felt like without some grinding, like anything was outside of my reach.
Yeah, even the grind itself too has actually been reduced from when it was back in. Because I remember I first started playing during the Heavensward expansion, which is the second one, and the grind back then versus now is almost like kind of non-existent. If you just want to focus on main scenario quest the entire time, you can do that and still get to the level that you need to be, and get the gear that you need in order to continue with the story and get to where your friends are or something like that. They do have story skips and stuff like that, but I like the game enough where it's like I've probably started the main game multiple times. I've played A Realm Reborn probably way more than I probably should have played that one. But yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah, it's, if you want to try it for free, it's got my recommendation, and I'm always looking for people to play with. So
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, please.
But I would love to be.
Please, I would love to be sponsored by Square Enix. Please, Yoshi P. No, it's
and I haven't played it in a while, but I can definitely say like it's fun. Like it holds up, and it's one of those I constantly thinking about going back to it. It's just hard because I always have so many things that I want to play that I know when I go back to it that will take my time for a while.
The gamer's eternal dilemma.
Yeah, it's funny.
Exactly.
I think on PS5 it says, because it records how much time you have in a game, and I think I laugh a little bit because it says like 900 hours or something like that, and I'm like, I don't know if that's an accurate description, considering Endwalker's launch was just me sitting in queue for like 7 hours at one point,
just waiting to get in.
Yeah, that was a nightmare. Hopefully that doesn't happen with Dawn Trail coming out soon, but
yeah, if you think that's embarrassing, I'm not going to tell you how many hours it says I have in Genshin.
No,
that's just a sign of a good game.
Yeah, it's very replayable, I will say that.
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about trying to get back into it again come the next couple of months, because I miss it.
Yeah.
And it has its own gold saucer, which isn't the same. We will get into Final Fantasy VII a little bit.
Like an actual gold saucer?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has its own, and the mini games are different, but I've spent a lot of time in it. Like, it's a lot of fun.
There's also very colorful side quests and stuff like that too, which I feel there's one in particular. It's not an all super serious game, but you have a there's one side quest that literally, it doesn't feel like it's in the same universe because physics just no longer apply in this one, because there's a character, he's the gentleman inspector extraordinaire Hildebrand, and he goes into some things where it's legitimately like, how do you survive? And of course, with Final Fantasy XIV, everything's very lore specific. It's like, oh no, there's a lore reason for why he's completely broken and doesn't make any sense. Like, when they closed the original Final Fantasy XIV 1.0, there's a meteor thing that fell. Another Final Fantasy VII thing. There's a lot of references to 7 in there. I think they even have materia too and stuff like that.
7 is their baby.
It is like their golden cow when it comes to making money. So they're going to reference
golden
it.
Milk.
Oh my god! Why didn't we figure this out earlier? No, but it's like the meteor fell, and this character, this Inspector Hildebrand, literally in the lore, is like, he tried to stop it by jumping and like punching it, and he obviously didn't. Like, it didn't stop it. But everyone's like, oh, he died. But then in Realm Reborn, you realize, No, he somehow he survived that.
Somehow.
Yeah.
He survived.
He survived. And
classic Palpatine.
Yeah. I would love to see a Hildebrand versus Palpatine. That'd be absolutely great.
I feel like there's probably a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
always a YouTube video.
He's actually referenced in Rebirth at one point in the Gold Saucer, which makes sense because his family, the Mandervilles, own the Gold Saucer in 14. So I'll talk about that.
For a hot second, I thought you meant Palpatine. I'm like, what?
Yeah, Palpatine.
What happened here?
I mean, I know we got Biggs and Wedge, but
Yeah, Palpatine. He's just chilling out there in Shinra. Yeah, that was only number 3. So I think that was number 3 or number 4. But anyway, we're not going to be able to get through all of it. But Persona 5 is one that I absolutely love. That's like number 3. The style, the music, the story. It got me right back into turn-based RPGs. If you haven't played it, go and play it. I have not played Royal, even though I know Royal is the more preferred one now. I think it gets rid of some of the more annoying aspects of 5's original game, but I enjoyed 5 quite a bit. Now, this is the one I was really trying to figure out because number 1 and number 2, one of these placements is the game we're talking about on this podcast right now, the majority of it. And another one's been on the list for 19 years as the number 1 game when anybody asks me what's your favorite game of all time. Kingdom Hearts 2 was one of my favorite games of all time. It was the first PlayStation 2 game I played. It was the first game that made me care about story and characters. The combat was great. Do I think it's the best story in Kingdom Hearts? Probably not, but
I don't know if any game is the best.
No. No. I do like Days' story a little bit better than 2.
That is true.
Yeah.
Everyone loves Days.
But I think as a compilation of like a full-on game package, 2 is really hard to beat. I really enjoy that game and all of the things associated with it. It was a formative game in my childhood. It's like, okay, what was Gary like back in the mid-2000s? You look at Kingdom Hearts 2 and it kind of explains a lot of my life decisions and choices.
You're running around with a cloak and a key.
Having your own like original Organization 13 character. Disney movies aren't as crazy, not as that. Or like,
the RPG that all your moms let you start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Now, I remember when they first were starting to market the first Kingdom Hearts, and it was a game that I was like, oh, I really want to play that game. That looks amazing. And it was really funny because I saw the trailer, and going back into gaming memories a little bit, I went and I told my cousin, because I was at like my grandparents' house or something like that, and I was like, have you heard of this new Kingdom Hearts game? I turned the corner on in the CRT. He's playing it. I'm like, what? He's like in like deep jungle and like Tarzan and stuff like that. I'm like, I gotta try it now. So I'm like, yeah. But 2 was like the first one I played all the way through and I absolutely enjoyed. And so for 19 years, that was the game I kept telling everybody, this is my favorite game of all time. Then and on April 11th, 2024, when I finally finished this game, Rebirth, that changed.
Everything has
Everything changed. So it's some high praise, I know, and might be some people like probably will call me out and say recency biased, but no, I genuinely think this game has overtaken that spot.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll segue right into the main topic off of that thought, because like we already said, we're going to be talking about Rebirth. We're going to talk about whatever we want. It's not a spoiler. I mean, there will be spoilers. This is not a spoiler-free episode. So once again, one last time, if you're still listening and you care about spoilers for this game, it's a good time not to listen anymore. But I think just to go off of your point a little bit too, Rebirth is, in my opinion, a fantastic 10 out of 10 experience. But also, whereas normally I would agree with you and say there is a little bit of recency bias, sit on it for a while, let it see. But we have Remake that we've already played 4 years ago to sit on, that's already helped build this world that we're into. We've just got more into it. Plus, obviously, we have the OG, so we already know whether or not we like the universe on a basis level. So I don't feel like it's too crazy to be able to say that you consider it your number 1. That it might still change, but I don't think recency bias applies as directly to this as it does to if you bought a new RPG or a new game that just came out and play it and say #1 game of all time, because that might have recency bias. But let's as we get into the topic, let's do a little bit of a backstory history on Final Fantasy. So Allie, what was your history with the series before Rebirth came out?
So my history with Square Enix games in general, is it Enix? Enix. I always say Enix.
I don't think it matters. Square Enix is what I say, but I don't know that that's right.
I mean, in Japanese, the E is going to be an E. So
yeah, maybe that makes sense.
Anyway, people can yell at me online. I was late to the game on a lot of things. I'm 23, so I was only 1 year old when the first Kingdom Hearts came out, so it was not part of my childhood because it was kind of out of the mainstream by the time I was old enough to play it. So I picked that up when I was in my mid-teens, and then from there I was starting to look into other Square games, and they had just announced 7 Remake was coming, and I'm like, this looks epic. I'm gonna go back and play the original because read the book before you watch the movie, right? And I absolutely fell in love with all of the world building and the characters, and it was so quirky and fun, but it also had such a powerful message. It's like it used its story to tell you something, and it left an impact on me. So when Remake came out a few years later, quite a few years later, I was very excited to come back into it with fresh eyes. And yeah, I absolutely love that too. It was kind of like my favorite modern generation game that's come out in quite a while. I replay about it once a year at least.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
I should platinum it. My ADHD prevents me from ever fully platinuming a game, but I think it's the closest I've come on one. I just need to get all the dresses.
It's worth it. It's a fun platinum.
Yeah, but I am late to the game when it comes to most people's history with 7, because, it's been
more
around
of an age
ages.
thing than it is anything else.
I mean, I was literally 1 year old when the original came out, so there's no way I was going to play it when it first came out.
Thanks for making me feel old, guys.
Sorry, Chris.
So I am old, so there's that.
I mean, I also think that just attests to how amazing of a game it is that even though we're past that age when most people would have played it just because it was there, it's still an instant classic for someone who plays it 20 years later.
100%.
Yeah, I had another thought and I lost it.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I'll take the blame. It was probably my fault. If it comes back to you, just interrupt Gary when I ask him, Gary, what's your earliest Final Fantasy memory? Oh, no, not earliest. What's your history with the series? That's what I meant to say.
Oh, man. This is going to sound a little, kind of almost like an echo a little bit, but yeah. I didn't really know much about Final Fantasy as a kid, but when I first started playing the Kingdom Hearts series, that's the mixture of Disney and Final Fantasy. I didn't really know what Final Fantasy was, but I'm like, that kind of looks kind of cool. That's kind of anime-esque. I like that stuff.
You have to know who Sephiroth is. Why did he kick your butt?
over and over again.
That was definitely an impression upon me, especially in 2, because he actually has full-on cutscenes in 2 and actually has an appearance and everything, so...
The biggest loss of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah. Cutting Square Enix from that definitely hurt just how much I cared about the game.
Yeah, I really hope that they've... I feel like Nomura knows at this point. He's like... he's probably had enough fan complaints about where Sephiroth in 3. I won't be surprised if he shows up in 4 or something like that. I won't be surprised. But anyway, it was like getting to know those characters, and specifically... the cool part about Kingdom Hearts, it has its journal system, Jiminy's Journal. You can go and you can look up all these characters and figure out where they're from, essentially. And as a young kid not knowing Final Fantasy, I looked at all the characters that I'm like, these aren't Simba or these other people. Who are these guys?
Anime.
That guy's got spiky hair and a big sword. Who's this guy? Cloud was immediately striking, especially when you think about Kingdom Hearts 1 design. It's intense. But I was like, that game sounds really, really cool. And I started noticing, like, a lot of these characters from Final Fantasy VII.
Gee, I wonder which one Square likes the best.
Right.
Well, Nomura actually has said about that game, like, he didn't want to introduce anybody who he hadn't wrote or made or something like that. He didn't want to, like, have, like, Cecil from Final Fantasy IV or something show up and then just do a disservice to him. So he wanted to have characters that he had a hand in making, in which case I'm like, where's Barrett? Why is Barrett not here?
Did he write? I'm going to butcher the name. Titus 10. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, he designed the characters for 10. That's why Orin shows up in Kingdom Hearts 2
because
as well.
There was Tidus and Selphie and a couple others on that opening Destiny Islands, and I'm like, who are these people and why do they not matter after 20 minutes?
Yeah, I know. It's sad that they're just gone.
that game did not come out too much longer after 10, and 10 was already considered like game of the year and everything when it came out, so
they had to bring him in at least somewhat. I bet
it was super I mean, it's still like people's favorite. But yeah, I was introduced to Final Fantasy that way, and the long journey of Gary finally playing Final Fantasy VII kind of began, because when I finally started to realize what Final Fantasy was when I was in, like, again, a teen. And I was like, how do I play Final Fantasy 1? I have no idea where... I did not know about retro GameStops. I didn't know about any of those types of stuff. I didn't know about, like, getting old games and stuff. Like, they don't sell PS1 games anymore. How do I do this? Emulation. That was pretty much what I turned into. And I would get kind of stuck. I was like, I don't really want to go through all this. And eventually... 14 kind of got my, myself back into gear, because everybody in my friend group was playing 14. I'm like, I like Square Enix, I like Kingdom Hearts and stuff. Let me try 14. 14 was really, really good. I enjoyed it. It was like, this is the perfect MMO that I would ever want. So I'm like, I'm going to finally go back and play those games and stuff.
Like, did you get stuck on the plot, or like you couldn't move forward that way?
I'll tell you what I got stuck on, because... when you're like a preteen and you're used to a lot of modern gaming conveniences of just like things telling you where to go and kind of showing you like the camera pans this way, it's like, yeah, you were supposed to go over there.
Oh yes, I had this experience as well.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII is very much built in the time of RPGs where you just talk to everybody and go and explore and you figure stuff out that way. And trying to tell like a preteen who has like some trauma about like reading for English and stuff like that, like, I don't want to have to do a book report and play a video game at the same time, type of deal. You get lost very, very quickly. And what happened was I got to Wall Market and didn't know what I was supposed to do.
That's a little bit early on to get lost.
It was very early on. I eventually did get past Midgar eventually, but I didn't play the whole game until Remake came out. When I started hearing about the remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I was like, okay, well, how far is it really going? It's going to the Midgar thing. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I've played up to Midgar.
I've done that.
I've done that. I can play this game. Only to then figure out that maybe you should have played a little further on than that. But up to that point, like, I think after Remake came out and I played it, I was like, I better actually fully play this game. And it's a bit of a thing where it's like, I keep playing the portion that the remake is going to next. And not that I've not finished it. I'm very close to finishing it. I'm at the Northern Cave, which is in Disc 3. I have not finished the entire game, but I know what happens at the end.
Why am I here? Embarrassed, Alex.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, I'm in the Northern Cave, and I've kind of made an oopsie when I got to the Northern Cave.
Is this Northern Cave the first time or the second time?
The second time.
Okay.
No, I'm at the end of the game, the legit end of the game. The problem I have,
most of the big twists have happened already.
All the big twists have already happened. The only thing I have to go do is fight Jenova and Sephiroth. Literally, the last things that in the game that you have to do.
But you don't know the iconic like final battle sequence.
A little bit. I know about a little bit of it, but I do know the standoff between Cloud and Sephiroth.
Okay, at least that, because when that was in Remake, I was like, this is amazing.
I knew immediately what they were referencing. Yeah.
But also that made me go like, they're not going to do this later on, are they? They're giving it to us now so they can take it away from us.
I know what they do in this game is already pretty crazy enough, but yeah.
I don't know what to expect anymore, frankly.
I kind of have a feeling of what we're going to get, but that's later.
We'll talk about that, but I kind of made a bit of an oopsie on the second time at the Northern Cave, because they give you an item to move the save point around. I didn't realize that it was a one-use item and used it on the first room. So now I've turned Final Fantasy VII into an NES game where I have to keep redoing the final dungeon every time I run into a Master Tomberry, essentially.
Do you have Knights of the Round?
No, I don't have Knights of the Round.
Just go do that.
Problem. I need to do Knights of the Round.
Because
yeah,
honestly, like
that'll make everything easy.
that's the only reason I beat Sephiroth.
Just get the most OP summon in the game. Yeah.
It will take a while just to watch the animation, but it's worth it.
Why is my gameplay now like why is my playthrough now like another 100 hours? It's because you have using Knights of the Round on literally every battle.
It's better than dying and starting over 80 times.
You're not wrong about that. Every time I go to a Master Tomberry, I'm like, I am so close, please. I almost beat you, and then he uses a chef's knife and everybody's dead. I'm like,
well, hang on. What is the item that gives you like resistance to instant death?
I think it's Ribbon.
Yeah, did you not?
I do have Ribbon, but like sometimes he does have stuff that will just whittle you down. There's Master Tomberry doesn't just have chef's knife, which casts death. He has Everyone's Grudge, which does a lot of damage. Okay. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, I know in Rebirth they had more like death resist.
A couple different options. Because I had to use it for one of the battles that I'll talk about in a little bit.
I think I know which battle you're talking about, and it's a nightmare.
So, and just for me, like, I'm obviously a little bit older than you guys. Well, maybe more than a little bit. But Final Fantasy VII came out when I was 10. And I wasn't paying any attention to it at the time. I didn't have a PlayStation at the time either. But my parents would not have let me play Final Fantasy. They were very anti anything that had a sword or a gun.
Yeah.
But once I was... So that was 10. Once I was 13... They cared a little bit less, and somebody let me borrow it. I know who. My friend Nick let me borrow his copy because he had it. And I'd already played a few RPGs at this point. I'd played Earthbound, Mario RPG, and Pokemon. But that was kind of it. Like, and
it's a very different vibe.
Very different, like very linear. There's no maps really. You're going from point A to point B. Final Fantasy VII blew my mind at 13. Like, the second you walk out of Midgar for the first time and the map opens up, yes, there had been games that had done that already, but I had never experienced it. And not to mention the plot twists. Like, I don't think I was fully aware of the fact that a video game could make you cry at that point. Yeah. Like, I don't think Earthbound was the most story-heavy game I'd played up to that point, and it's still pretty light in comparison. It gets kind of heavy, but most of it went over my head, you know. And other than that, like, I played Mario, Sonic, you know, that's what I was playing. Final Fantasy VII blew my mind in so many ways. Like I didn't realize stories in video games could be so deep.
And at this point, it was kind of pre-internet forums.
Yeah, I had no idea.
No spoilers for you?
I didn't know. Yeah, I mean, obviously, spoiler alert, but if you're still listening, I don't know why you are. I didn't know Aerith died.
Okay.
Like, I had no idea getting to it.
See, coming in almost 20 years late, I did know that.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid it.
I still cried. Like, I didn't realize, like, I came in prepared, like, oh, I know this happens. And then the way they delivered that was still so emotional.
That was something I was worried about when I was replaying it, because I'm like, this is, like, the biggest spoiler of spoilers to any video game story.
It's the Luke, I am your father of gaming.
Of video games,
right,
yeah.
Of video games.
And that, I mean... It's so amazing to me that some people still haven't had that spoiled for them, but
it's literally, if you watch the Wreck-It Ralph movie, Aerith lives as graffitied on all the walls.
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, there is
it's pop culture at this point. Like, it's not even just
people reference it all the time too.
But I mean, I remember the moment sitting in my room, you know, my room that I had growing up, and I had like a little, maybe a 20-inch CRT, you know, one of the small ones that had a little VCR in it and everything, and that's what I was playing on. I remember sitting there as she died and being like, or as that moment happened, and when Cloud, you know, lets her body go, and being like, "This, wait, what?"
Yeah,
like literally having a moment of like, "This isn't happening. Like, this is a video game. Like, she's gonna come back." And then like, yeah, no, I remember. And then I remember also admitting to somebody not long after that I cried and they made fun of me. So I was like, screw you.
Yeah,
shame on them.
I was still pretty emotionally devastated at that scene too. And I was like, but I know it's coming. So why? It's just really well done. That's exactly why.
Yeah, it is. It's they do a good job with Aerith in the OG7, but man, in Remake and Rebirth, did they really make it all hurt.
Yeah.
So I'd played 7. I played Crisis Core when it came out. At that point, I was already at GameStop, I think, so I was probably already 18, 19. I had a PSP. I bought Crisis Core. Only thing I've still never played is Dirge of Cerberus, but I have it.
From
but
what
I
I've
haven't played
heard,
it.
that's probably okay.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard.
Yeah,
it's on my list. Like, I want to play it eventually, but it's not. it never makes it to the top of my list.
Like, I think unless you really want to know every in and out of the lore, it doesn't seem to have that big of an impact.
Yeah, and I've heard the gameplay's not great, so on top of it, that doesn't help it.
I talk like I know that, but I've just watched a bunch of YouTubers say the same thing.
Well, and Vincent is a cool character, but he's never been my favorite character, so it makes it easier to always be like, oh, I'll get to it eventually.
And also, I feel like he's more interesting when you know less about him.
Yeah,
like,
it is the
mystery. And the red cloak.
when all of a sudden when you take that mystery away, you're like, oh, it's just Vincent.
I agree. So I played Rebirth. I mean, I played the OG. I played Crisis Core. So when Remake got announced, like obviously I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing. I don't think that in a million years I ever expected it to actually live up to the hype that I even had built for it in my head, which was high. So I mean, we're going to mainly talk about Rebirth, but Remake, I adore Remake. Like, I think it's phenomenal.
Same. I have a question for you because you would have been around definitely and probably in the know at this time. The Final Fantasy VII PS3 tech demo. Mm-hmm. What was your initial reaction to that when that came out? Because a lot of people around your age who played the original and grew up with it and everything like that, they kind of have this feeling of like maybe that was where they were going to go and nothing came from it later.
No, 100%. Everybody was like, oh, we're getting a Final Fantasy VII remake. That's how long that the rumor mill had been swirling on a 7 remake.
I mean, I think they were probably testing the waters a bit to see, like, would this get enough hype?
I mean, I feel like the hype was through the roof already then.
It's just, when you're touching a classic, you have to be very careful.
Mm-hmm. So. And I would rather they took an extra, which it did. It took them an extra 14 years from that point to actually make it, and I'd rather they do that and make it right. Which
sounds like that's the direction they're going as a company right now.
Yeah, and that's smarter. But yeah, I mean, I love Final Fantasy overall. Like 7 was my introduction into the grander world of RPGs, and I still love it, but randomly other games have surpassed it as far as my favorite RPGs go. But Remake brought me back into that, and like I want to go back and play OG7 again because I haven't played it in, what year is it? 24? Probably at least 10 years.
Wow.
So it's been a while. Like,
I've at least revisited the first half several times since then.
Yeah, the last time was right after we got married, which was 10 years ago. I played through Midgar, and I stopped. So I don't know why I stopped. I didn't keep playing.
Midgar just keeps stopping people for some reason.
Well, and that's the thing. And like, I look back at it now, and Midgar is not my favorite part of the game. No. And that I'll also say that too, because we're going to talk about Remake just a little bit. Midgar has always been my I've played through 7 probably 4 or 5 times over the years, but it's just been a while now. Midgar was always my least favorite part of the game after my first playthrough. Remake made me love that portion of the game, which I think to me is one of its greatest like strengths as far as it really got me hyped for everything else that was to come, because it showed me how much detail they were willing to put in. Jesse and Biggs and Wedge were okay characters in 7. Like, they didn't get a lot of time, so you didn't have a lot of affection for them. Yeah. Remake blew that out of the water. Like, I felt a lot of emotion when Remake was ended, and, Jesse was, presumably dead, and Wedge was presumably dead, I was really quite sad because I really liked them.
Yeah, and I like that they tied that back in with Rebirth a little bit, because in the original those characters didn't get a lot of screen time, and so aside from vaguely mentioning something happened later in the game, they didn't talk about it, but there was like a whole quest in Rebirth where they relived a lot of those emotions.
Yeah, and to see the effect that it still has on Barrett and Tifa as the game goes on, and
which makes sense. It's only been a few weeks for the characters in the game,
and they were like family. They weren't just friends.
What was 4 years ago for us was literally yesterday for most of these casts. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as Remake goes, it sounds like we all already had a lot of love for Remake before Rebirth came out.
I love the combat system because you don't have to know all the nuances of it when you start, but if you get into it, it's so much fun.
It's very rewarding. I love games, but not always do I appreciate playing a game on its hardest difficulty. When I went back to Remake and played it on hard to get the hard trophy, I actually had probably even more fun than I had on the original playthrough, because that's just how good the battle system is.
If the biggest focus is to try and make you pay attention to how things work, you can just kind of press square to attack everything, but when it comes to an action game, you really want to be paying attention to all the different things, and they translated the Final Fantasy aspects of it like beautifully, of like weaknesses, figuring out, and of course the stagger thing too, and just how rewarding it is when you finally like pressure something and you get that big stagger that shows up on the screen. You're like, okay, I can finally do damage to this thing. Let's go.
Yeah, when my dad was watching me play it the first time, he's like, why aren't you doing any damage? I'm like, I'm just trying to stagger them. You have to wait.
It's coming, Dad.
Yeah.
It's just a very rewarding battle system. And just on that note too, today, to kind of refresh my mind a little bit before the topic, I put Rebirth back in because I hadn't played it for probably about a month. And I was like, all right, I'm going to try to do some of the quests I hadn't finished and do some of that stuff. And I went to the Coliseum, and like the battle system came right back to me. And like, I went through and beat a battle that I had struggled with, which shouldn't happen after a month of not playing, but I actually beat it on my first try. And I was just like, but that's how intuitive the battle system is. And after probably a minute of trying to remember that I don't use X to dodge, I use circle to dodge, so I'm playing something else where X is dodge.
Yeah.
After about a minute of that, it all came back to me. I knew exactly what moves I wanted to use at what time, and like, it's good.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into a sort of off-topic question. Do you guys use the shortcuts for like combos and things, or do you just go through the menuing?
I know they're there, but I've never used them.
Okay,
that's mostly like just not taking the time to do it.
I didn't use them the first couple playthroughs of Remake, and then on my hard mode playthrough, I did start using them because I saw a couple YouTube videos of people who had like really cool Tifa builds, and I'm like, okay, this kind of looks fun. If you get the right shortcuts mapped, everything flows so cinematically. It's so fun to watch, and you're not just constantly like clicking X and going through menus.
Yeah.
It almost gets more of like a fighting game sort of element to it.
That is what a lot of people, one of my favorite YouTubers, who's also a major Final Fantasy fan, Maximilian dude, talks about that all the time. And he's a big fighting game YouTuber mainly. But he mentions a lot about like how it does feel like a fighting game a lot of the time. You have meter, you have all this different stuff. And when you finally get into the rhythm of it, I think the first time you play through it, you're going to be kind of like, okay, let me go through the menu. Let me pick like Infinity's End or something like that with Cloud. But eventually you do kind of get this sense of like, okay, there's a combo system I can actually do with this. I'm going to play this one here and play this one here. And then you kind of get a feel for it. I always think it's funny going back and watching people's playthroughs, and I'm like, they shortcut it like that? Huh, that's not how I do my buttons. But yeah, it is interesting.
I also have praise for that, because if you're playing it on the lower difficulties, you really don't need to know anything about that. But if you are the kind of gamer who appreciates those things, jumping up into hard mode, all of a sudden it's like a completely new game.
Yeah, it's something I might need to watch some videos on shortcuts and just to actually take advantage of it, because that sounds like it would probably make things easier.
Yeah, like I never really used Star Shower, Chi Trap, what's the other one? Anyway, some of Tifa's moves, I would use them sparingly, but I didn't think about comboing them together.
Yeah.
But if you look up, there's a lot of like strategies where you can use one into the next, where they're more effective when you stack them together. And it's really fun when you land it right.
Yeah, there are some really broken Tifa combos in Remake specifically.
Like, I am definitely more of an Aerith fan than a Tifa fan character-wise, but when it comes to gameplay, Tifa's my favorite to play.
Yeah. So on that note, what were your team, like your main team throughout the game? Let's start with Allie.
I was Girl Power, I was Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith.
Yeah.
It's a really overpowered team, honestly.
Well, and then character story-wise, those usually were the characters that I enjoyed spending the most time with. That was my team in the OG 7 as well, up until Aerith died, and then I swapped Vincent in because he was just cool. Yeah,
that he is. Gary, what was your team?
For which game? Remake or Rebirth?
We'll just say Rebirth.
I, for some reason, always defaulted back to the Avalanche group, which is Tifa, Barret, and Cloud. I always like turning Barret into this weird gun shooting paladin almost. I love.
He does good at it.
He does really good.
He's so far away from the heat a lot of the times.
Right, so it's like he surprisingly is a really good healer a lot of the times, and he has the stats for it usually, and
Yeah,
so
and even has that one skill where he can just absorb all the other party members' damage.
Yep.
I think
Just it's straight up tanks.
Yeah, isn't that like lifesaver or something?
I think that's what it's called.
It's something
Honestly,
like that.
I don't use Barret often enough to have all the names memorized. But,
Yeah,
but he's very fun. Like,
He is.
side note, that's one of the things I loved about Rebirth in particular is that they make you use all of the characters. And even though I still enjoy my main party, I always loved it when they made me switch up because those other characters were just as fun.
Yeah, that was one thing in Remake I never really got a chance to, because I remember there's a portion in Remake, like chapter, like I think it's like chapter 5 or something. Well, you go through sector 5, so chapter 5. Anyway,
The Aerith chapter.
The Aerith chapter. You use Cloud and Aerith, and I would always just stick with Cloud because I'm like, oh, I understand this. And then I go to Aerith, and I'm like, I cast her in a fight, not a fighting game, but in an action game. I'm like, I don't know about this. I really don't know. And so in Remake, you could really just like ignore that for the most part and just play whatever.
Aerith slander.
I know.
Get out of here.
I like Aerith, but I didn't understand how to play her at the time. This game forces you to use literally everyone and understand their combos, understand what their abilities do. And when Aerith like finally clicked, I was like, she's OP. Oh my god, she has like some really strong, powerful moves.
She's a powerhouse.
Wow.
So I slept on some of the synergy skills for way too long. Like I actually beat the game before I started playing with them. I forget what it's called, but she has one with both Tifa and Cloud where it's like a giant laser beam.
Oh yeah, it's nuts.
It's insane. You can beat pretty much everything.
Fantastic.
I'm like, why didn't I use this before?
Yeah, the synergy skills were such a nice addition, like to add like another layer to the whole battle system, and like the strategy you could use on that too, where you could either break up your action bar to give yourself more actions, or unlimited MP, or increase their stagger. Like
I honestly didn't use it enough.
Yeah,
like so much of the game was built around it, but I found it just convoluted enough that I defaulted back to my Remake playstyle, and I didn't touch it until late game.
Yeah,
you're not the only one, because I think a lot of people had said the same thing, like I'd barely touch the synergy skills or something like that, but it's like when you start playing with them and you start understanding, you're like, oh, this is...
I can launch Tifa into the sky. I don't have to keep hitting the air down here on the ground.
Yeah, that was... I played through almost my entire thing of Rebirth, not knowing that Cloud could actually launch himself into the sky. So
clearly, I knew that.
Yeah. Cloud has an ability, I think it's after you dodge and you hold, because I went back through and we were doing Chadley missions and stuff like that, and that's supposed to be kind of the tutorial where you learn how these people play. I completely skipped. I definitely did not do them.
I beat Remake on hard mode. I don't need these.
Shut up, Chadley. I know how to play this game. I went through and I was like, wait, you just hold and... Oh, he is an air combo guy, because people kept mentioning he's like, oh, he's very air combo heavy. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh,
you fools.
Okay,
wait a minute.
I guess I know what I'm going to go home and do tonight.
Right.
He becomes really fun. He even has like an air dash and stuff like that too.
Yeah, there's one skill that he can only use in air, and I never use it because I couldn't figure out how to get him up there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
He's like, he's just not going to learn that skill today, I suppose.
Yeah. We don't need that.
Yep.
Yeah, no, my team was Cloud, Tifa. 100% of the time it was Cloud and Tifa, because Tifa, I mean, I was in love with Tifa when I was a kid, and I still love Tifa.
Yeah. I think she's all this Aerith slander.
No, I like Aerith too, but Tifa was, she was my girl.
Yeah.
I used a little bit of everybody for a while. Once you get Kate Sith, I used him. I really liked Kate Sith's playstyle. Like using the Moogle as its own weapon was.
He's still so kitschy in my heart.
Yeah,
kitschy.
It's so kitschy, but it is. I thought it was fun, but once he leaves the party, and I was like, because I did use him pretty regularly for a while. So then I switched to Yuffie, and Yuffie's so fun to play
They're
as.
all so fun, which is why it's hard. It's like, oh, I want to play with my favorites, but at the same time, now I'm not playing with them.
Yeah, my next playthrough, once I do the hard playthrough, I'll probably mix it up and do a different 3
I definitely appreciate that they have the background party members leveling up.
Because and they're always taking a part in the battle, too. Like, it feels like they're there.
Like in the OG, when it's like, oh, I've had Aerith in my party for the entire game, and now she's gone, and I have to use this really underleveled character. I mean, narratively, that helped it hit a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work so well in practice.
It is a punishment, essentially.
And logic makes sense, too. They're all out there in the field fighting monsters. Why would the 3 not being used be like, okay, guys, you got this. We're going to go hang out over there, you know?
Well, I love that you can see them in the combat. That they actually do participate a little bit. I mean, the damage is pretty minimal, but you can see that Barrett's in the background shooting.
They're using their abilities or their attacks.
I love that it's like, we can kind of see where they're going with the 3rd game a little bit, because they're starting to get this idea of like, we want to incorporate, we don't want it to be so strange where it's like, there's only these 3 and everybody just like went to like go stay at the inn or something like that for the whole game, but it's like they're all traveling together and they're all doing these things. Obviously the 3-party system is like integral to Final Fantasy VII and even has like some narrative theming specifically to its 7's inspirations and stuff like that, but with things like backline commands when a party member is down or something like that, you're starting to see kind of like maybe they'll be a little bit more involved in the next game too. Like you might actually have some more, you might be able to synergy skill with somebody who's not even in the party or something like that, or maybe even call them in. People have been wanting a tag system for a long time in this game, but
yeah, it'd be cool. That's one thing that 10 did pretty well, being able to switch party members in and out during battle, but that was still a turn-based.
It's also a little bit too OP though at the same time.
It could be.
It could definitely be.
If you have all your characters at your disposal, you can have someone built for a really specific role, swap them in, use them, and swap them out. It's like, it's not that that's not something that games do, but I feel like with 7's combat it would be too strong.
It could unbalance it real
quick.
It
could, if it was in Rebirth, it would be broken for sure. Or even in Remake, it would be broken. I mean, absolutely.
They already took away some of our really broken things from the original game in this one, so I don't see why they would give us other broken things.
Yeah, they took away the broken stuff and then gave them to someone else to try and fight you with. So it's like, oh,
Phoenix
great.
is so underwhelming after having the original.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so we talked about Remake a little bit. So obviously Remake ends, like we said, where you're leaving Midgar. It's very clear that that's the end of the story, and you know you're picking back up from that point once you start. And I feel like the game transitioned that perfectly as far as starting Rebirth.
Well, we're talking about this section. Are you guys aware of the update that happened like day one for when Rebirth came out?
I heard about this after I started playing Rebirth a little bit.
So story-wise, this might be important.
Yeah.
So originally with Remake, I forget the exact line, but Aerith, when she looked up at the sky, like in the final scene, she's like, "The steel sky, I miss it," was kind of the phrase.
Yeah.
They patched that when Rebirth launched, and they changed it to...
She
Darn,
says,
I forget the exact one, but it's something
I don't
about
like the look of the sky
the sky,
or
it scares me or something like that.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're starting to think that might be significant is because of the ending of Rebirth, when Cloud looks up and see the sky with the giant like rift in it that no one else can see. The fact that they go and patch the game this many years later, it might be significant plot-wise.
That makes
just
sense.
To be aware of.
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was strange. It almost makes me feel like, okay, are we... Because apparently it was a localization error. That was something that they were trying to convey in the original, but...
Did they not patch it in Japanese too?
I think they may have patched it in Japanese. Well, in Japanese, it probably would have been a much more literal translation.
Yeah, but either way, it's like an intentional enough story point that they had the voice actors re-record the line. So
yeah,
that's a big deal. I did not know that. That shows that they're definitely forward thinking with how they want the story to end too. They're trying to connect it all. But I felt like Remake to Rebirth was a great, easy transition. Like if you play them back to back, it feels like you're playing disc. Well, that's not how the 7 ended, but it feels like you're moving on from after Midgar into Calm.
Yeah, it's not disc 1. Surprisingly enough, that's not disc 1.
No, not even close.
After all the praise that you guys have had, I should probably put it out there now before we get much further. This is my game of the year. I absolutely love it. 10 out of 10 experience. But I do have some complaints with certain
complaints. The game is
perfect.
perfect.
Yes, no, but like I want to put that out there that I'm going to randomly drop them in. I think as I was trying to think about how I would describe what didn't sit well with me for this game, the phrase that I've come on is, I think they forgot the art of subtlety in a lot of ways in Rebirth that they really did a good job with in the OG. And I'll refer back to that as we get to like discussions for each part. But I think with the opening of Rebirth, they just slammed us with Zack saving everybody from, or well, Aerith from the helicopter, and things are just going on, and there's so much happening, and they're not explaining everything, and it's just like slapping you upside the head. There's no quiet intro. Like with Remake, I loved that scene of the bird just like flying over, and you're getting to see the world. You're slowly introducing. You hear Sephiroth's theme in the background. Like they're easing you into this before they hit you with the big, obviously bombing mission. That's not subtle, but this one, it's just like they drop the player into this really confusing scene.
Yeah.
And don't tell you what's going on. Especially, they've also marketed this for like, you don't have to have played Remake to start this one. I'm like, I would have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I don't think that marketing was... Somebody was not on the same page.
They just wanted to sell more.
Somebody was not on the same page with that.
Because I, like I said, I agree. I feel like that scene was very confusing because I remember it leaving me being like, okay, what is going on? But I
almost wish they had kept that post-credit scene from Intergrade as like the opening of Rebirth.
That would have been smart.
It definitely would have like paced it probably a little bit better. Because that was a surprise for literally everyone who played that game. So yeah.
I feel like I know it's weird to me that they would have ever said that Rebirth was standalone, because not only does it not feel standalone from Remake,
it's just not.
There was a lot of times while I was playing it where I was like, I don't see not having played the original game, or at least Crisis Core, to really like fully grasp a lot of stuff that's going on.
To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of any of the Zack segments being put in. This is also made worse by the fact that in one of the recent patches, if you go in the settings, there's literally an option you can turn off all of the Zack scenes for the game. Are
you serious?
No, I'm not kidding. They've put it in that you can just disable all of those scenes from playing in the game, and I'm like, that just goes to show that they don't really belong here. Like, I feel like the game didn't need them, and it was just kind of an extra fan service thing.
You might be right, because I love a little bit of fan service, and I definitely was happy that it was there.
If they left it, like, leaving in the final battle stuff, I'm like, okay, it's not that I don't want any fan service, but the amount of marketing they did for Zack being central to the story, and then the amount I feel like that paid off is not equal.
They definitely were like, even in the cover art, right? You have Zack.
Yeah, like he was given 50% of the attention.
He has almost the same amount of space as either Sephiroth or Cloud on that cover, and I do see where you're coming from that segment. I think they definitely pulled a few punches with Zack and giving enough like stuff to actually do in a lot of the interlude stuff.
I think he was barely playable.
He was definitely barely playable. They were trying to get it so that like you felt like you had some interaction and it wasn't just like 10-minute cutscenes, but
it was 10-minute cutscenes.
It was 10-minute cutscenes.
I love stories, so that's not necessarily a problem for me.
But
like,
it
just felt a little jarring to switch back and forth.
I will say I never felt like I truly understood what was happening with those cutscenes until the end.
Yeah.
Which I know sometimes that's the point, but when it's a character that they had, like you said, like they made it seem like Zack was going to play a much bigger role. So it was kind of convoluted and confusing as to why he was in all these scenes that they're pushing on us throughout the game. But then the payout is kind of small at the end. Like, I still loved the end sequence.
If it was just cool that he popped in at the end and you didn't know that was going to happen, you're like, oh my gosh, it's Zack. But the fact that they spent so much of the marketing telling you that Zack was going to be like as big of a character in this as Cloud was, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what role is he going to play? And then it was this little one that now they've given us a button to turn off all of his scenes. It's like, okay, that wasn't quite what I expected.
I think to a certain extent they did that because they realized, kind of partly even just when they're going back through the main scenario, that the pacing of when certain Zack scenes show up is kind of weird. Especially, you get the Zack scene at the beginning, but you don't get another one, well, depending on how fast you play it. If you're doing everything in the grasslands and everything in Junon, you're not seeing that next scene for like almost like 20 hours. So it's like, I mean, okay.
To be honest, it felt more like set up for something they want to do in the third installment.
That's what I was going to say. It's like,
which then my critique would be just give us a DLC or something, so where it's its own entity and it doesn't have to be split up and interjected into the main story.
Yeah, if they kind of took the Yuffie route with it, because that's kind of what...
I loved the Yuffie route, but I wouldn't have wanted it stuck in the original remake game.
It would have felt forced.
It would have, So maybe it was just kind of them trying to figure out a solution to that, and just kind of landing... Because they've even said now they don't want to do DLC for Rebirth, so they're just going straight into the third game development-wise, so...
I mean, that makes sense from a development standpoint, but that also does limit their ability to give you story side points without making sure it's in the main game.
Yeah. And now part of me wants to... I mean, I kind of want to do my hard run sooner than I did my remake hard run, because that took me over a year to get to. Now I kind of want to do it sooner just because the way, like you guys both said, the way that the Zack segments were spaced out made it always be like, oh, there's another Zack segment. What's going on? I don't know. Yeah. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh, that was cool. Like by the end segment, but it is like now that we're
you lore things.
Yeah, and now that we're talking about it, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I don't really remember it all that well.
That's because there wasn't very much.
Yeah, like, you have like 5 throughout the game, I think, or something like that.
And even so, not much would happen in each. So
yeah, it was. I mean, probably 5 minutes worth of a scene once you were done with any walking in between.
And I love Zack, so I'm not upset that they've tried to reintroduce him. I just think it's another one of those story pacing elements that I don't think they quite landed.
I remember when, before Rebirth came out, I was like, well, how the heck are they going to do Zack? Because obviously Zack is playing at the end of Remake, and you get the end cutscene of like Intergrade. You understand, you're like, okay, Zack is definitely going to play a part in the next game, but how are they going to do it? We already have like so much of OG FF7 we've got to go through. So how are they going to? So I kind of understood how they went the whole interlude route, kind of how it's a kind of like in a book, like sometimes you'll be reading a big thing and here's a chapter spliced in. I feel like they probably could have done a lot better with that and maybe have spaced it out a little more evenly, or even given,
at least not put Zack on the cover like that,
Yeah,
like,
well, they knew what they were doing, obviously, but yeah.
I mean, from a marketing standpoint, I suppose, but I feel like Final Fantasy VII is just such a classic that you can't play with it like you would market other things. You don't need to. People already know what this is.
Yeah.
Majority. I mean, I can't imagine the percentage of people that are playing Final Fantasy for the first time is very high.
Yeah, and then if you have played 7 before, you don't need to know Zack is in it to want to. Like,
yeah,
right.
Agreed.
It's very much marketed to people who've played the games before. Though I will say, just as a bit of a fan thing, the payoff a little bit more towards the end, if it wasn't something that like you were already kind of like on board with, I was on board with almost all of the Zack stuff really, but that was because my favorite part of Remake was also just trying to figure out what the heck is actually going on in the meta side of things. Like, okay, this is like certain key music moments are being played here. There's so many Advent Children references going on everywhere. It's like, what is going on? Like the whole theory crafting thing. So to me, the Zack stuff was always like a bit of like another treat for me, but I can definitely understand like pace. It can cause a few pacing issues. And yes,
I'm also coming at this a little bit more from a literary analysis standpoint, because for the original game, that was what drew me to it the most. It was like it was like a well-written novel that had gameplay with it.
Right.
So even if there's something that like, if this was any other game, it wasn't Final Fantasy VII, if I wasn't comparing it to the novel of the original, I wouldn't think twice about it. But because I have this really amazing source material, every decision they make is gonna be noticeable. And I'm gonna weigh, do I like this better or do I like this less? So that was one of the ones that, it's fine. If it was any other game, I wouldn't care. But it didn't. It did distract just a little bit from the game for me.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying completely. I think that makes sense. I know I sometimes can be very easy on things and not hold things, not scrutinize enough. But you bringing that up, I definitely see it. And it makes me, like I said, it makes me want to play it again and analyze how it all played out.
Well, I mean, another critique for me would be that the fact this entire game exists when the original was like all together, and then this is taking the middle chunk and trying to give it a cohesive start and end point, and like I understand what they're doing, but there's really no way from a story standpoint that when it was written to be a singular movie that you can have the climaxes feel as natural. It's like if you took A New Hope and broke it up into a trilogy. Where would you segment off A New Hope so that it felt like 3 cohesive stories? You can't really do it, so I'm not expecting them to 100% land that till we've got the whole trilogy out and I can look back and see, like, okay, where was the pacing?
See how it all falls together at
but
the
a
end.
few elements, like, because they had to force that boss fight, the final boss, to be where it was, I did lose some of the impact of things that were more impactful in the original game. Because, again, the art of subtlety that I feel like they haven't got when Aerith died, that final boss after, they've given you a piece of equipment right before you start that makes you immune to water damage. So if you've equipped that, you go into this fight with Genova, who does almost entirely water damage. It's almost impossible to lose. It was just purely a cinematic boss fight.
Yeah.
You've got the music, you've got all of this dramatic stuff going on, but it was almost quiet and easy because you as a player are still processing what's going on. But because of where they had to change the pacing for this one, now we have to have a real challenging boss fight right after we've processed what happened with Aerith. On top of we're more confused than we were in the original. So for me, it's like, yeah, I don't know what else they would have done, but at the same time, some of the emotions that they really they were successful with in the OG, they can't do that again.
Yeah. You can't like redo the same things. Obviously, there is a problem with, like, you know, if you've played the original, a lot of those emotions, trying to re-experience those again is always kind of going to be an issue. So I think the thing that they were trying to do, one of like Square Enix's like kind of main objectives, and kind of like the director and story writer Nojima's directive probably, was to try and re-emphasize a lot of those points. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There is one place where I'm like, this kind of feels like it's going a little bit kind of more to what you're saying. It's, for me, it happens earlier in the game.
I think I know what you're talking about.
There's one particular moment where it's like, it didn't need to be this big moment.
I absolutely know what you're talking about.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because a lot of people have talked about this too, where it's like in the original game, they did it really subtly and it was impactful. Not to diss on what they've done, because what they do is really incredible work, and you know, the swelling of the music, how they made everything. But there is a little bit of that, like, like what you're saying. There's a little bit of subtlety
lost. To tell the audience what scene it is, since they don't know.
the Dyne scene.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's not the one I was thinking of. But that is another one that I had the same feeling.
Yeah, that was probably there was 2 scenes where I was like, that didn't feel as impactful, and the Dyne stuff was one of them.
Dyne was definitely one. Here's no shade to John Eric Bailey. He does a great job as Barrett in that scene. And the voice acting is right on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. But the problem, I think, is the scene goes on just a little too long. And it's kind of more on Dyne himself, as how he's written and how he kind of goes out. And
they were scared to touch on darker story points in this.
A little bit.
Like, they shied away from things that might have left you reeling a little more. And I feel like Dyne was one of those where, you know, he was a little bit more disturbed in the original.
Oh, yeah.
But he also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while, but Dyne felt like he knew what he was doing in the original. Very much so aware. And in this guy, this version was not, like, all there.
This one was just very chaotic and insane.
Yeah. I guess it's all back to the whole thing of separate worlds, I suppose.
I mean,
you know, I guess
if you want to have a lore thing to blame it on, but
yeah, exactly. But
for me, the first moment of I feel like they're going too over the top is, I can't remember the name of it, but the giant snake boss.
Yeah. Oh, Midgar Sommer.
I messaged Chris here right after. I'm like, okay, I need to gripe to someone about this. In the original game, you walk out of Midgar, you feel like, oh, I've got this. I just beat all these giant robots. I'm strong here. They throw you out into the field, and then they go for the emotional impact. They're like, okay, I'm strong. I beat all this. I'm just going to go find Sephiroth and beat him. And then you spend forever trying to get across this swamp so that you don't get eaten by this giant snake.
Yeah.
And then you get to the other side and this thing's just impaled on a tree. And you're like, oh my gosh, Sephiroth is a little stronger than I thought. I might need to go do some leveling up now. Whereas in this one, it's like they go through all of the work to avoid fighting the giant snake. And then they make you fight it. And I'm like, why did I do all this work?
I do think there is I think the narrative reason for that is different from the original, and I think it has a lot more to do with kind of recontextualizing Sephiroth's like overall relation with Cloud and kind of how he
but they could
toys
have
with
just
him.
added in another scene to do that. They didn't have, because that's such an iconic moment in the original. Like,
oh, it stuck with me. I remember that moment of walking into the swamp.
Yeah, everyone does. It's like,
and getting destroyed.
You're like, oh no, what is this thing?
And that was another thing that overall I feel like the game kind of lacked those super bosses to remind you that you're not the strongest person on the planet.
Yeah.
And that one in particular, I hate that they made it a mandatory boss fight. I wish they had left it the quiet moment of realizing you have so far to go.
Yeah.
I agree. And when you messaged me, that's what I think I even said. Like, I know that was, there's only 2 parts in the game for me, and I will always admit I'm not that critical of things unless it's really bad. There are only 2 parts in the game that really stuck out to me as being not as good as the original game, and it was that scene and the Dine scene. The Dine scene for me was probably even more so personally because I remember the impact that had on me as like when I played it originally, how like real it felt and dark. But
it was super dark.
It's still sad, but not the same. It's not the same kind of sad because it's like I say this loosely, so don't take it personally, but the guy wasn't there. Like him dying didn't have as much of an impact because he was already miserable, but not in the way that dying in the OG game was miserable, where he'd lost everything but was still aware. This guy was gone. His brain wasn't all there.
Yeah, and then again, my art of subtlety thing in the original. Forgive me if I'm remembering wrong. I don't think there was any boss music when you fought Dine. I think it was just like the eerie wind sound. You're standing on the edge of a cliff.
That's my memory too.
It's dark and windy, and it had a very like quiet, melancholy feel to it on top of being kind of dark. Whereas this one was very loud and in your face, and like it's not that it wasn't a good scene, but you know, again, they're touching a classic, so I'm gonna go back. This
you're
scene,
gonna review it.
It's only in comparison. Sure. It's good. It's good as it was if it was all there was.
If this game was coming out completely original, never had anything to compare to, I don't think anyone would have any complaints. But because they intentionally made that choice to change something, we're gonna notice it.
Yeah, I bet anybody I can't imagine anybody who has played or would go and play the OG7 now and compare those 2 scenes wouldn't say that the OG had the better.
And I think they're scared of doing some of the more dark storylines. Like in the original, I don't know if either of you remember, I've been watching some videos lately like analyzing the story to get my brain refreshed. Dine, when he found out Marlene was alive, he's like, okay, we're gonna die so we can go see her mom. Like that's a pretty dark thing to put in a game for a plot line. So they might have been scared to go that way. So they're like, let's just change the whole scene so people don't remember that happened. But I mean, sometimes
people are gonna remember.
Yeah, sometimes that contrast of like, oh my gosh, this character is literally insane. Like that delivers some of the points a little better. So I'm sad that they scared away from some things like that.
I agree.
Right. I think there is definitely some changing that they did just simply so that they could write it in a, I wouldn't necessarily say that they were just like, oh, we're going to force Dine to become this big epic boss. I did kind of feel that when all of a sudden he starts summoning all the junk stuff and he has like all this magical power. I'm like,
again,
dude,
subtlety is gone.
Dude just had a gun arm. That was literally it. And I understand you have to kind of, if you're going to do the boss fight, you got to make it just a teensy bit more involved than just like, Barrett shoots Dine shoots Barrett heals himself, and Dine.
But that's what it was in the original.
But that was what
fine.
It was.
I mean,
it was fine because of the way that they had it all set up. But
it was narratively a moment. It wasn't. It's not like it was everyone's favorite memory of fighting Sephiroth. It wasn't meant to be that kind of a moment. It was a story moment.
It was definitely a story beat, and it was important for Barrett's story specifically. And I like a lot of the stuff that they did, but that to me, that was going a bit far. I don't think I'm going to give credit to the original, to the people who are making this, because these are the original people. They're making all this stuff. I don't think that they were trying to go back and basically change it too much. I think what they were trying to do, in a good, honest attempt, was trying to like, let's heighten the emotion of these scenes. However, sometimes what the choices that they make to try and make it that way,
it reverses it.
Yeah. And to another extent too, Square Enix is also trying to make this to be like, for some people this is going to be the way they play Final Fantasy VII. Like they're going to play Remake, and then they're going to play Rebirth, and then whatever the third game is going to be called, that's how they're going to play the original, and then go back and then play the original and maybe compare. So in that sense, yeah, that might, to somebody who's never played the original, I would wonder how that scene lands with them.
I think it'll be fine. They probably won't think twice about it, but it's not like where we're still thinking about it so many years later from the original. It doesn't hit the same way.
It'll be a different take on the same scene, essentially. And I think it just goes to kind of bring praise to both the original and other things, too, of just like how much we do care, right, about these scenes.
Yeah. Okay, and since I've spent so much time critiquing, I'm now going to throw in something that I really liked about that in general.
No, that's great.
If you revisit the spot where you fought Dine later in the game, there's like a little grave, and Barrett, even if he's not in your main party, he will wander off and he'll go stand like in front of it and just look at it. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, the world building, like, they're making you feel immersed that these are actual people and not just my characters.
Yeah, they do care. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, you may have liked this one thing, but we're just going to erase it and do whatever we want. They do care. It's just sometimes maybe they're...
I went and like stood Claude next to it for a bit and just kind of like thought about all the backstory stuff. I'm like, I like that they made me a little bit introspective about this.
It's kind of like a Star Wars reference to Episode 1 where George Lucas is like, I may have gone a bit far in a few too places. I think maybe that's kind of maybe that's something they might be saying now, looking back on some of those scenes. But yeah, the people who were involved, especially like the voice actors, did their jobs. They did a really good job with that. They did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still felt emotion, but it's not the same emotion. It's not the same thing. So yeah, I understand completely where you're coming from.
Yeah, I liked that scene. I caught that too when Barrett goes and stands by the grave. That and the scene when Tifa is looking at the poster of Jesse and the gold saucer, which that one's a little more. I don't know that one's missable. I think you can always see that, but I could be wrong.
I think you see that if you're on the date in chapter, I think at 8, when you first go to the... If Tifa is like the character that you go with, I think you do...
You go there with Aerith too if you're on the date with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm repping Aerith here.
well, Aerith also... I think Aerith also has something to say about at that poster too, because she has some connection. Yeah.
Later in the game, I think it is missable. You can just have a conversation with Barrett in front of it. It's...
Okay, I don't know that I saw that.
Yeah, it's not like main story. It's just when you go back to the saucer later, you can wander around and have some conversations with characters.
Is that like a chapter 12 thing or something?
I think so. Okay. I actually saw it after I beat the main game, so I'm not sure at what point it kicks in.
Yeah.
I will say that there is a lot of little nods throughout the game that are very easily missable with the character interactions. But either with the main cast or NPCs sometimes. But when you go into any city and the characters disperse and you can actually communicate and talk to them, it's very well done. And
I love that you have to choose the right thing in conversations.
Yes.
Yeah. And they only give you one shot. And
they don't give you enough time. It's not like you can sit there and think, okay, would you like it better if I said this?
Exactly. And I messed up quite a few times.
No, me too. I'm like, I thought I knew what she wanted.
I remember there was one time I was like going through a conversation and I'm like, somebody mentioned something in one of the novels and I had read them and I was like, oh yeah, I think the right one is if I pick this, and then I look later like on guides and they're like, no, you should have picked this one. I'm like, what? What do you mean? This was he would have known. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
But anyway. At the same time, it's like talking to real people, which I appreciated that. I'm like, you can't predict it. It's not like you don't go into real conversations having read the other person's wiki. You know, you got to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. That's what I appreciated about it because it felt real. So let's get into some detail discussion. Obviously, especially when you've played the original game, there's a lot of comparisons that can be made. And for me, one of that is the locations. Because there's no single location that isn't 10 times more detailed than the original. Did you guys have a favorite location?
Ooh, that is a good question. I wish it were bigger. I think I liked Nibelheim. It just had a very kind of like melancholy feel to it, but it was also very beautiful.
It felt weird and ghost-like a little bit, but also the scene when they walk in and they're like, what the heck? Why is it normal again?
Yeah.
But it's far from normal.
But all the quests in that region too, I remember really enjoying.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's a really good one. For me, there's two that really stand out. Well, actually, I think I have to go to 3. There's a lot of good areas. This is the hard, if I had to choose. There is the second area you go to is Junon. Junon is so much bigger than what it was in the original game. In the original game, it's literally like a town and a beachside in a patch of grass. That's all it is. Now you have this whole thing with like big lore things about like the Republic of Junon, what has happened here. You hear about it. You even see, technically you see pictures of it like in some small NPC interactions, and it's like, wow, this is so much bigger. One of my favorite sections, of course, is when you get to be part of the parade, which was one of my...
That was great.
How they handled all of that, and also all the side stuff too, and some of the goofy interactions you had with the Shinra troops. Like, they're so good.
Bald bar.
The bald bar is so good.
I wrote that down. Yeah, I was like, I got to bring up the crazy bald bar.
That was great.
In the OST, the song that they sing, I think, is called "The Ballad of the Bald" or something like that. It's so good.
It's so good. But just to the parade too. Like, I loved that whole section. The mini game was fun. I like a good like a rhythm type base game. But after the parade and the action happens, and then the crew is like, "We're with you, boss," or however they say it.
That was cute.
Yes.
And you actually have to protect them, kind of. Like, I loved that interaction. Like, to me, it was a great moment for Cloud to show a little bit of his backstory, a little bit of the Shinra time, a little bit more fleshed out.
Right. Yeah.
But also, like, I don't know. There's just that, to me, was some of the human interaction they added into the game from the side characters that really worked. Like,
and if you played the original, it's a little more impactful because, you know, Cloud was one of those grunts. It's not like he was necessarily leading everybody. He was one of those. So having to look out for them, it reminds you of where he was.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought that was really, really well done. I really liked it.
Midgar 7th Infantry for life.
Yeah.
These guys are so good.
Did you guys find all of them?
Yes.
Okay.
I did
too.
I was like, I gotta find all these guys. These guys are great.
Yeah, I wouldn't allow myself to start until I found them all.
Me too.
I love the little interactions you have with them where it's just like you enter into something and like I think probably for me being a little bit of a hobbyist, him going into like one of the stores and they're just looking at like a model of like the Sister Ray. It's like, are you here to look at the premium grades too? Dude, he's the captain. Like, it's so good. I enjoy it. It's like they put a lot of detail. Junon specifically, like I feel like was done.
You can't go back up there.
I know.
I spent so long trying to figure out
I
how to get back.
tried to too. I was like, how do you get back there?
So it's like you want to spend as much time as you possibly can. It'll probably be in part 3, but who knows?
I think everything's gonna have to.
Everything's
be
gonna be part 3 essentially. That's gonna be like the true remake essentially at that point. But yeah, that point, and I really liked it. It got. Yeah, I had to really figure out how to navigate it, but Gungaga. I really like Gungaga a lot.
I ended up liking it too. I think when I was first there, I was hitting that stride in the story where I'm like, okay, I want to know what happens, so I'm not going to delve into the side content too much. So I didn't really appreciate it until I went back post-game and did the quest. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I like this area.
It's really pretty. Gungaga is like, it's beautiful to look at.
The music's iconic too.
Oh, really? That was going to be the one thing I complained about. I'm like, it's too big. I wanted something a little subtler.
It starts subtle, I will say that. It changes as you progress through the of the chapter.
When it gets to like the tribal chanting, I'm like, okay, it's a little much.
It can be, especially if you're stuck in Gungaga and you're like, these stupid mushrooms won't go where I want them to go.
I know, I got a little confused there for a while too.
The map there is no help.
Yeah, it just says like good luck. That's all you get. Okay.
Definitely took me the longest. But I was glad they brought Cisne back from Crisis Core. I thought that was nice.
All the Crisis Core references in that area are so good.
Yeah.
Did you guys get the glitch where if you do her quests back to back, there's 2 of her in her house?
No. That's hilarious.
That was fun.
But I will say Gungaga probably had some of my favorite story bits too. Like, everything from that was pretty like top tier. Like the whole reactor section, and then afterwards too. Like and the Cloud and Tifa interactions afterwards. Like, was a really big fan.
They were good, but they also didn't feel very natural to me. I'm like, he literally just kicked her off the side of the reactor, and now we're just like having this really sweet moment. Maybe. Like, I would be mildly terrified. Like, are you gonna go all Sephiroth on me?
I think what we learn in this game is that
Tifa has no red flag radar.
Is a number 1 Cloud fan.
Yeah. She loves her some Cloud.
Yeah, a little too much.
A little too much.
It's unhealthy. Are you saying it's unhealthy?
Well, I'm just saying that they do such a good job of fleshing out all the characters in a real human way. Like, I could imagine them being real people. And then there's a couple moments of dissonance where I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel like something a real person would do. And when he literally goes nuts on
Oh, yeah.
He loses his mind, flips out, and pushes her into the Mako. I'm like, that's kind of something you would remember. And then she immediately goes back to trusting him again. I'm like, it doesn't quite feel right to me, but I mean,
I think there was intentionally supposed to be a little bit of apprehension, but maybe it didn't quite land.
I also wish the rest of the party had been a little bit more concerned.
Yeah.
Barrett's at least kind of mad
for like 4 seconds, and then they forget about it.
I think it's one of those things where eventually over time it's supposed to build. Right, this whole suspicion of
that's one of the things they changed in this one.
Yeah, because that wasn't much touched on much in the original.
No,
and that's again one of my mild critiques from a narrative standpoint. In the original, you got hints of something was off with Cloud, but you didn't really know until the end of the Temple of the Ancients.
Yeah,
like that was the first time he actually snapped.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one, it's like they've been building up to it for so long that it's like very tense, and you really expect it to happen when it does instead of being a surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also one of those things too where it's like they start using it as in like narrative plotting. You would have this idea of like there's a point where you're supposed to have like the antagonistic force get a little stronger, especially towards the end, and I think that's kind of what they end up using it a little bit for. And again, it might simply just be a matter of them splitting the game where it did. So,
yeah, but I don't know. Are we ready to go into the Temple of the Ancient story part? Because that's the one thing that I also had another comment on.
Let's end with that. So let's talk about a few other things first, because we will get there. Because we're gonna talk about the ending some.
Right. Don't let me derail you.
No, it's fine. It feels like a better place to end on.
Oh yeah.
So we talked about locations a little bit. Like for me personally, Gold Saucer was probably always one of my favorite places.
They did great,
and they did a fantastic job of just building it up and making it as extravagant as it felt, but even more so.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but it felt like a really quirky Disneyland, and I liked that.
Yeah, it definitely had a Disney vibe to it, and I liked that a lot. And Costa del Sol was like a huge upgrade from the old one. I liked how lively it felt. And it was cool to see Johnny back. I like Johnny in the original.
Yeah.
What they've been doing with Johnny is just great, honestly.
His entire quest with all those clones, that I had so much fun with that.
I thought it was hilarious. Yeah. Very well done. That was some of my favorite, like, I got a lot of laughs there. Also, Red 13 on the cruise ship. Some people
great.
have like said that like they hated it because it was stupid, but I thought it was hilarious.
I loved it even when he had the little party horn sound. He's like dressed up and
I mean, if you hate that, then you hated the original because it had so much of that quirky Red 13 stuff.
That's what I thought. I thought it was hilarious. Like I actually laughed out loud. Like it wasn't just a chuckle. Like I laughed. Like I thought it was funny.
No, yeah, that's really good. One of the moments I loved earlier too on the cruise ship, which it's funny, it's not a cruise ship in the original, it's a cargo ship. So they changed that. But what I loved with the thing is he's trying to get into the Queen's Blood tournament, and they're like, no, we can't allow animals to join in. And he's like, let me speak to your manager, like straight up as a Karen moment. I'm like, this is so great.
Yeah, no, though I think they nailed the locations. I think they nailed the open world aspects of it too, because I've been pretty open about the fact that open world stuff is not my favorite. I don't love open world games. Which granted, at its core, it is still a more linear game. You can easily skip a lot of that and just go from point A to point B. But I enjoyed exploring each region and doing most of the quests. Some of them towards the end of the game, I got a little bit worn out from doing them all as I went. But overall, I enjoyed all that. I thought it was really cool. I loved exploring all of the different, like trying to find all the different secrets and the hidden stuff and getting the towers to find out where everything was. And I liked the proto-relic quests for the most part.
I have been playing Horizon Forbidden West, and then I have been revisiting Final Fantasy 15 for the first time in the last year, and I haven't finished either of them, but I've been kind of dabbling with both. So they're also both open worlds that I think directly inspired some choices made here. So I think I have one complaint that they hold your hand a little too much on things.
Yeah.
Like every time I want to find a spring, there's an owl who's like immediately going to lead me to it. Or, even the fact that you have to do the little mini games to unlock the crystals, I'm like, it feels like they're
games and the crystals I did not like.
Yeah.
I didn't need to press triangle 3 times every time I find one of these.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to swap out puzzles for monotonous little things.
Yeah.
I would have preferred puzzles, honestly.
Yeah, I want to work hard to find a spring instead of having 7 that they lead me to.
Yeah. I will say sometimes for me, I just want to be like, I want to explore, but I don't mind being led to it sometimes to make that, this one thing a little easier.
But it's not open world at that point. Like, you can do that with a linear game.
That's probably my problem, is I don't love open world. So that's probably why I liked it.
Well, technically this game, it doesn't really treat it as like this is not an open world in the sense of like Elden Ring or, Horizon, right? Where you, from the get-go, you might start in like a small area and then it expands and you're able to kind of go wherever you want.
It's very segmented off.
It's very big zone connected sort of game, which personally I kind of tend to like more because open worlds sometimes have a tendency. It's probably one of the reasons that another gaming sin to add to mine, where I haven't really finished Tears of the Kingdom a little bit yet because like having a little bit of in Breath of the Wild, you kind of have a little bit more of a direction of like, hey, go here after the Great Plateau, and then you kind of get the sense of like, okay, if I go here and I go to these other places, now I have a place I'm going to go to. Excuse me, notebook. They do that in Tears of the Kingdom, but not nearly to the same extent, where it's like, okay, you kind of get the gist, go and explore this world that has kind of changed. I realize I really like games that kind of have structure to them.
Oh, I love a good linear
more.
game. Like,
yeah.
I do love Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but I don't want every Zelda game going forward to be open world. I want them to have some linear games back. I think that it's Rebirth was a linear game in an open world fashion.
It's a linear game with big zones, kind of almost Xenoblade like, because Xenoblade's not a true open world either, but it has huge zones, and so to a certain extent you feel the same sense that you get from a open world type of a game, but
somehow that also makes it feel emptier. Like,
it can.
Even though I might have the exact same amount of things to do in Horizon in the same space, because of the way it's formatted in 7, it feels like I have to hike a long way through nothing to get to the next task.
Yeah, but that nothing does look pretty nice.
Oh, though. No, it's absolutely gorgeous. I could just sit and stand there. I mean, if that was the only thing I had to do, I'd be happy.
Yeah. This is one of those things I might have to think more on because, like, like I've said, I'm not a huge open world game. I tend to get a little overwhelmed, and I don't like the lack of direction. Like, I don't always like not being told where to go.
Have you played Forbidden West?
I played Zero Dawn. I haven't played Forbidden West, though.
I haven't played Zero Dawn, but I have played Forbidden West. And I really liked it because plot-wise, it is more linear. There's always the next place to go. You're not left wandering aimlessly.
Yeah.
But there's so much that you can find if you do wander off the beaten path that at a certain point it's like, I would rather do that than follow the main plot line.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. I did really enjoy Zero Dawn, but I also really enjoyed Breath of the Wild. But I couldn't get into Tears of the Kingdom. So I don't know. I don't know what it is all the time. I think I liked this because I knew at any point if I didn't want to keep exploring,
you could just keep
all
going.
I had to do was go here, nobody can see this, but over here, and I'd be back on the path of the main story. And I think that at the end of the day, that is one thing I always like in games, is just a clear story.
I just didn't like how copy paste it was, I think, maybe.
Sometimes it was a little copy paste, but they do try
there were
to
the springs, there was I forget what they're called,
there's the summon crystals,
stuff. And then there was always going to be a chocobo farm, and it's like you kind of knew
the combat assignments.
Combat assignments.
It's like
all
it's
that.
Not that it wasn't spread out over space. It's just that it was very much.
There wasn't a lot of originality from one to the next.
And you didn't have to think very hard. Like the only time I had an actual challenge is when the map was kind of confusing and I got stuck on the wrong side of a little mountain and I spent half an hour trying to figure out how to get to the combat assignment. I'm like, that's not really a puzzle. I don't feel like I've accomplished anything when I'm done.
Yeah. No, there definitely was not a puzzle-heavy game, but it was a mini-game heavy game.
Yeah, lots of pushing triangle at the right time.
So many mini-games. At first, I was kind of all for it. I was like, I love a good mini-game. But man, after
they turned almost everything into a mini-game was the problem,
So I actually wrote down all the I think that I missed a couple, but I wrote down the majority of the mini-games that at least happened more than once, I think.
Yeah.
And I also ranked them according to how I liked them. So you guys don't have to do this, but I'm going to read them off. This is from the least to the most liked on my side. Just to give an idea for people who maybe haven't played it and are just listening for the heck of it, how many mini games there are. Okay. So, once again, least favorite to most favorite. Cactuar Crush, Glide to Chocobo, Gears and Gambits, Moogle Mischief, Chocobo Hustle, Jump Frog, Run Wild, which was the Red 13 like Rocket League type.
See, that's the bottom of the list for me.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one you have to really learn in order to.
This was low, but I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. Then there was Crunch Off, which was the remake or the return of the Tifa Crunches mini game from remake. Dolphin Show, Desert Rush, 3D Brawler, which actually I think I'd put 3D Brawler lower on this list now that I had to play it again earlier.
It becomes almost RNG at one point.
Was yelling at my TV earlier when I was trying to beat Sephiroth. G-Bike, Junon Parade, which only rated low because it's a one-off. But I put it on here because it was so good. Like I really loved that segment. Pirates Rampage, Chocobo Racing, the piano music rhythm, I don't know what they called it. Galactic Saviors, Queen's Blood, Fort Condor.
Really?
Queen's Blood is number one.
You put Fort... Yeah, I was going to say, you put Fort Condor above...
I love Fort... If they were like, hey, we're releasing a full fleshed out Fort Condor minigame for like $10 or $20, like, we're just I'd buy it and play it all day.
Did you like this Fort Condor over the intermission one?
No, I like the intermission one too. I'd have to play them side by side because I don't remember them feeling different.
Okay.
I just remember this one gave me rage towards the end.
Yeah, especially there was a couple things.
I'm like, I just want to be done.
Have you done the hard mode version?
No, I did the easy mode to beat the last one.
I did them all. I loved it.
I did the hard mode versions, and there is legitimately sometimes because in the original in intermission you could change units and you could like select units. This one obviously. They replaced the Fort Condor from intermission with Queen's Blood, which is a much more in-depth
I love
game.
Queen's Blood so much.
I absolutely love
Queen's Blood was great.
Queen's Blood is like, I'm like, I finally understand the people who are always like, oh, Triple Triad is so good. I'm like, now I understand that feeling of like, there's this side game within a game that's so great, and you're like, I gotta play more. Give me more Queen's Blood, please.
I almost wish there was more of it, and there was still a lot of it. So.
I wish there was like a random computer you could fight against after the fact instead of like preset opponents.
Yeah, because it's like once you've actually kind of gone through them,
there needs to be an online version.
Oh man, I would play an online.
They would have to rebalance so much because there's some very OP cards.
But
in
all
the game,
the cards you can get, like everyone could be using the same OP cards, and it could come down to strategy.
It's
not an RNG thing of if you got that really strong card. It's just did you play enough to find it?
Yeah, if they did a Queen's Blood like actual like I'm going to say board game, but like actually made the board and the like cards that you could buy in boosters or whatever.
Oh, I'd buy it.
100%. I'd buy it and go
Square
in.
Enix, are you listening?
Yeah, you have three sales right now.
If you want money, this is how.
Yeah, dude.
You can make a gotcha game out of this Square Enix. You can use.
I mean, I only say no because I can't do Genshin and only
Blood.
one at a time.
Hey, I mean, they have $140 million of profit that they kind of left on the table. You can make it back through God. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But
they made the chessboard from Kingdom Hearts 3 as something you can buy, and it's extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So I feel like at some point or another, even if it's just a collectible, they're gonna do it.
That's one thing I would 100% buy. And I mean, they could do the cards separately and not need the board to play it. Like, you don't need it. Like, they could do a paper one that comes with like a starter deck type thing. But
I do have to ask, what was your guys' favorite cards to use in Queen's Blood?
Oh, that's a big question, though.
That is a good question. I wish I would have written that down. One of the cards I used for a long time was the Dio card.
Oh, Dio is pretty good, yeah.
I liked Phoenix, I think.
Phoenix was a good card.
Because if you planned ahead, you could totally flip the game in one move.
By the time I learned the game pretty quickly, but that deep strategy of it, I didn't learn until I'd beat everybody and was doing the Gold Saucer challenges when they forced some of the deeper strategy on you.
Right.
And by that point, then I was like, oh, I'm really getting it now, and I realized how much easier some earlier battles could have been if I had paid more attention to that stuff. So I don't know that I have I don't know that I know exactly what my favorite cards would be. I just know some of the ones I use the most, like Dio.
Yeah, I think for me, I ended up using a lot of Midgard Sommer and like Dio and Space Ranger and stuff like that.
Space Ranger was good.
Space Ranger is a pretty good card.
Oh, the Chocobo and Moogle one.
Chocobo and Moogle is
that's a great
top
card.
tier. And there's a lot of great variety that they allowed for that. The hardest thing for Queen's Blood for me, though, I still haven't finished like the final survival thing, but
they're fun.
The survivals are very fun when
Have
you
you
start
got all
to
the
figure it out.
main character cards?
Most of them.
I got it. I
Yeah,
did
most of
everything, I
them.
think.
I did.
Those were really OP, and I wish I had gotten them earlier in the game.
Yeah,
'cause
I did.
think
It was one of the
I
last
know.
things I did, which I was mad at myself for.
Well,
think
I
that-
have like 3 cards left to find, I think, in the whole game, and I'm like, I want to just finish out the deck.
Yeah, that's also kind of one of the things too. It's like you get them towards the very end, and you don't have too many opponents afterward to kind of use them,
Now
and you're
it's
like,
just for collecting.
Yeah.
No, it's just to complete the folio
Because
essentially.
if you go back to that card salesman in, I think it's the Grasslands late game, he has a whole bunch of stuff to sell you.
Yeah, there's there is one challenge throughout the entire game that was the hardest for Queen's Blood, and it wasn't in the Gold Saucer, but it was rather in Costa del Sol.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those were fun.
Yeah, those were fun, but there's one that took me literally like an hour and 45 minutes trying to figure out. It was Guy Natak challenge, because it's like, okay, you can build up all this stuff, but what Guy Natak does is he takes the value of whatever you've based in just one area, and then he splits it into 2. I couldn't figure that out for the life of me for whatever reason. I'm like, why is this not working? I'm doing everything right. Apparently not. I'm missing one placement of a card.
I don't remember this, but I did beat it. So.
Yeah,
I know I
was
did too,
tough.
but I don't remember off the top of my head either.
It was really tough for me.
So Queen's Blood was both of your favorite minigames?
Absolutely, 10 out of
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
I would buy Queen's Blood if it was its own game and did not have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth attached.
Yeah, Queen's Blood it's one of those things where it's just like, you could tell where a lot of the thought of minigame development went, and it was definitely, how do we make something that outdoes Fort Condor in Remake? And yeah, this
Well, I think the
definitely
beauty of
did
it was
that.
it was so simple.
It was. It was super easy to get into, which is perfect when it comes to a card game.
Which that's my complaint with Final Fantasy VIII. I've only played like the first 2 hours of it, but literally every aspect of the game I can summarize with the word confusing. So I was not getting into any of the card game stuff there. And then with this one, it's like they went the total opposite route of like, you don't need to know anything. Here's a card, play it and figure it out.
Yeah, it's definitely less convoluted. I will say, I love Final Fantasy VIII, and I
I
think
need to try it again.
Gets,
I know
it
people
gets
love
really
it.
hated on, but the junction system is very convoluted.
Well-
but I can help you with it because it's my
Okay.
most played Final Fantasy.
I'll take you up on that later, but like from a narrative standpoint, I loved with Final Fantasy VII, they just drop you in the middle of the action, but they teach you each tiny thing as you go, so you're enjoying the plot line without feeling swamped with reading menus. Whereas 8 put me in school, literally, and made me read through like
Yeah, I
80
mean-
menus, and
Oh,
I'm
no,
like,
it's-
what's happening?
It's a lot. It's a
Why am
lot.
I here? Why do I care?
Don't get me started with Final Fantasy 12 that pretty much says, okay, time to learn C++ with the Gambit system, and how you're going to figure out your...
Yeah, I still 12 is one of the 3 that I still have not finished.
I think I got through like the first third of the game, and I was like, all right.
I need to go
I'll
back
play
to
it eventually. I'll probably play Zodiac Age or something, but yeah, it's...
One day I intend to go back to it because I want to have played all of them.
Yeah.
But it's a struggle because I didn't like it when it came out. I didn't like it when it got re-released on Switch.
But that's also the same
But-
thing of like, I kind of got a little PTSD from that game when we went to Gears and Gambits in Cosmo Canyon. I'm like, oh god, it's the same system. Oh no.
So that brings
Yeah.
me to my next, same topic, but what was your guys' least favorite minigame?
The one with Red 13, what is it called?
Oh, the Run Wild.
It just felt so unnecessary.
Yeah,
Like
it was
it's not
kind of
that-
weird.
There
It
was
didn't
nothing
feel
wrong
like
with
it fit in the world at all. Like
There was nothing wrong with it. It was just that moment where I remember very vividly experiencing the thought, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I said the same thing.
I want to be going on doing the other things, and they're making me do this.
Yeah.
And then I did the side quest. Was it the side quest with Aerith, where then you have to go do it again?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you making me do it again? I
Can I
already did it
please
the
don't?
first time.
Yeah, that was. I think that was the moment where I was like, "Man, there's a lot of mini games in this game." Like,
Yeah.
And they're all fine. It's just there's too many.
there's too many. I will say. So, what's your least favorite one, Gary?
My least favorite is the Chocobo gliding from Cosmo Canyon, mainly just because the control of it is
It's wonky.
The camera's frustrating.
Yeah,
the camera is
I
incredibly
finally figured
frustrating.
it out to the point where I was able to go get the the gold or the S rank or whatever. Do
Yeah.
that.
I haven't finished it.
But I
No.
did not have fun. I didn't enjoy doing it.
I just
That's
the
not
cons-
anything someone should say when they're talking
Yeah.
about a video game.
The completionist in me finished it,
Uh-huh.
but the Cactor Crush I hate it. That's
one was
the what's his name? The
Kid G.
Kid G.
Oh,
yeah.
I actually did have fun with the minigame itself, but the whole quest surrounding it was just...
I didn't like that you had to leave and come back for the Proto Relic. Like, you started it in Chapter 8 and you couldn't finish it until Chapter 12.
Oh, really? I just did it at end of the game, so I didn't have that issue.
Yeah, it's weird because if you were playing around and you're trying to get everything as you were going...
Yeah, there's too many steps, and the minigame itself...
It was weird, yeah.
I didn't love... Like, the Yuffie part's easy, but the Aerith part, like, I just can't... I can't get it down fast enough to do the hard parts
It was easier for me to do Aerith, maybe because I play her.
Do a video and then show me what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, because I got
have you done
one...
the hard level?
Oh yeah, I got all the max rewards.
Okay,
for all those.
I'm doing something wrong because I didn't use Aerith much through this playthrough.
Were you swapping through her different?
I was trying to,
like the light and dark.
I've been trying to, but I think I must be doing something wrong because I literally wanted to throw the control against the wall. I was getting so mad.
Yeah. Sorceress Storm, her skill.
Very powerful.
That one, she like does a big spin and then an AOE lightning attack.
Okay.
That one was really strong for beating big groups of enemies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to try it again because I went back today, like I said, and my goal was to try to clean up some of that stuff. And the one I wanted to do first was the last side quest, which was the Ultimate Party Animal Challenge, which we were talking about a little bit, which I don't think you've gotten to yet. But
you can spoil it for me.
Okay, it is the last side quest. Once you finished every other side quest, this one opens up. And then, long story short, you meet the Shinra middle manager again, and you go to Gold Saucer, and you have to beat him at every one of the mini games there, including the race and everything. And
to be honest, I didn't revisit the mini games in Gold Saucer, aside from the Space Ranger one.
Space Ranger was my favorite of those. So, and you have to do them all once, and I didn't think any of them were that hard. No, other than the Coliseum battle.
Coliseum is like it's supposed to be the tough one.
It is.
It was fun, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I only did I did the harder challenges. Like, I skipped over some of the easier ones because I wanted the gears.
Oh.
Not the gears, the gear, the equipment that you earn.
Yeah. I would like to hear what you have to say about its challenge, his challenge in the Coliseum, because he has a 5-tier challenge that you have to do, and
it's brutal.
Maybe I didn't get it.
It's all the
you only get it when you get this last
that quest. Yeah, I have like 2 side quests left to go before I finished them all out. So.
They do what they were.
I finally finished it, but man.
Were you maxed out level wise?
No, I wasn't. So if you're maxed out, it might be easier in that regard.
I just got to level 70 today, which is the max level.
So to kind of prep you for this, and not to really spoil it, but kind of how the fights start. You know where the fight's kind of going when the first thing you're fighting is a giant cactuar? You're like, oh no. I know kind of where this is going. You're like, cactuar, not really that big of a deal. It's the second one.
It's not one giant cactuar either. It's 2.
No, it's 2. 2 giant cactuars. And then the second one is the one that nearly gave me a heart attack when you're now fighting an army of Tonberries. Yeah,
literally 10 Tonberries.
Well,
which that one you just put on the ribbon to or whatever item to.
But you better put it on the right person, because I put it on Barrett. And then they all swarmed Barrett into like a corner, and I'm like, he can't get out.
I literally, to beat it, I put one on all 3 characters.
I don't think I had one.
I don't remember. I must have bought 2 more or something. But
yeah, well, there's that one equipment that you can craft.
It's probably probably crafted it, because I know that I was like, I'm sick of it. I need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is all just telling me I have to play more Final Fantasy VII.
And that one, once you have that, is now then the easiest level. Once you can avoid the instant death or easiest match. But then,
are either of you maxed out on character level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now I am.
I'm not.
Because I still haven't beat all the side quests, and I haven't really been grinding or anything. I've just kind of been doing the main plot. I like that it happens pretty naturally.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? Because I'm only level like 55, I think.
There's the XP bonus materia that I put on Cloud.
Yeah.
I think I have that on Cloud.
But the thing is,
I have to check.
I don't know. Maybe it applies to the whole party or something, because I got level 70 with Cloud and Tifa today within 2 battles of each other, and only Cloud has it equipped.
If you're doing some of the, well, here's the thing too, if you're doing a lot of the Coliseum battles and Chadley stuff, that also gives you XP and gives you a lot of it too.
I don't feel like I was doing that much, because there's a lot of Chadley stuff that I didn't touch.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of the Chadley stuff, because
Chadley is everywhere in this game.
I've been yes.
Okay, have you guys done the Odin battle? Because that's one of the last things I have to do too. I can't beat it. What am
have you guys? Well, wasn't it a prerequisite for the I'm forgetting the name of the quest. The Proto Relic.
I haven't done the Gilgamesh battle
It
yet
is.
because
Oh.
I can't beat Odin.
Okay.
Okay, well, you're gonna love the Gilgamesh quest.
Yeah, Gilgamesh is.
Because honestly, that was the hardest boss for me in the whole game.
No, he was definitely meant to be
Well,
the
I just-
super
I
boss.
can't
Gilgamesh
figure
was
out-
easy. Like I beat him on the first try.
But
It was the
yeah,
prerequisite summon
prerequisite
battles.
bosses when
They-
they're like
I
fight
can't-
two at once.
Do you mind a subtle spoiler?
No, go ahead.
They make you fight
I-
all of the summons,
did the
but
first-
you do 2 of them at the same time.
Yeah, it's a
And-
lot. I did the first one. The was it Titan and whatever. The first 2 that you fight together. I did that one, and then I was like, well, I have to beat Odin still, and then I got
I
mad.
don't
And
remember having too much trouble with Odin. I think the idea is just not getting hit.
I can't survive. Yeah, maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need
If
to
he
watch
hits
something.
you a bunch, then he goes into his rage mode and like
and he
one
does
hit
his
kills you.
Zenketsusen or whatever.
But if you avoid getting
Zenketsu,
hit,
yeah.
so I just kind of swap into Tifa and just kind of like dive around the field just so he can't hit you unless there's a clear opening, and then I go get some hits, then I keep dashing around.
Okay.
The
I'm
idea
gonna have to
is
try it again today because
I'm
the
probably
idea
not
is you
doing
have to
it.
keep constantly damaging him. You basically play almost like a MMO boss essentially, where you just keep attacking and attacking and attacking and try and dodge.
Which Chi Trap is probably good for that too with Tifa, because you can just kind of leave it behind where he's
Yeah.
standing and then dodge around.
Aerith's also really good for that too.
Yeah.
Just being able to like kind of continually lay down damage on Odin essentially. So yeah, it is a tougher one of the summon battles, but
The
it's a
one
pretty
that
fun.
it's not as impossible as I'm making it on myself. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
impossible.
I'm doing something wrong.
I died like the first few times to it. I'm like, okay, what happened? And then I put Assess on and I read through it and I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to it, and then I'll let you guys know
Yeah.
if I'm just terrible at the game or if I was just doing it wrong.
the hardest fight for me in the whole game that I had was what is his name? It's Phoenix and then the other summon that he was with.
Phoenix and
You remember the double battle from the Proto Relic quest?
so it's I think
I forget the name.
because they usually pair them up pretty close.
It was like the giant bull one, I think.
Oh, Kuyata.
Yes.
Yeah, Kuyata is.
And-
yeah.
And because Phoenix is paired with it, like you can't kill Phoenix until you get rid of Kuyata, and then immediately he gets revived.
That's the problem. Yeah.
And I was so mad. I spent so long on that battle. It was genuinely more challenging than all of the final bosses, even when I was almost max level.
Yeah.
Man.
I've heard there's some
I
really.
haven't done that.
I've heard there's some really tough stuff with like when you get to the end of all the Chadley stuff, and there's like, because at the end of the game it tells you that you can go back and there are even more like expert battles essentially. And I've heard from like the Reddit and other things like that those are some of the hardest battles in the game, even harder than Gilgamesh's like trials and stuff like that you have to go through. So
I'm just wondering what
Yeah.
the payoff is, because for
I
someone
mean-
who has other games to be playing, why would I want
True.
to do
I
that
mean,
unless I'm
I
platinum?
think it's mainly for the what is it called? The Gadadermerang,
yeah, Goddardamaron, yeah,
Is
something like that.
which
It's
is
like
an
the final
equipment
weapon.
item that
Oh.
like
Yeah.
apparently makes your hard playthrough a lot easier. I know that I got it in a remake, but
Yeah.
I think
I don't-
I did in remake as well, but I can't remember.
It's really for like the people who are trying to be like true completionists essentially. So
That's
it's
fair, but I wish that there was a little bit more of a gateway for those of us.
Right.
Who
Yeah.
I
aren't.
agree.
It's
a pain.
It's not for the faint of heart, is what I've heard. So yeah.
The problem with this one is, unlike remake, it's so long that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be able to keep doing the playthroughs where I can kind of, build up to being able to do that.
Kind of master it.
Yeah, they do something with New Game Plus, and I appreciate this as I was going back through a second playthrough, is that they don't make it clear, and this was also a problem that they had with one particular menu when it first launched, was not making it clear that going back through you could have all your side quest progress and all that stuff stay with you, and even in the what is it, we were just talking about it. The open world section and all those little nodes and stuff, you can have that just all done and just go through all main story stuff on a second playthrough.
I mean,
and it's
still
significantly
massive.
It's still massive, but it is like significantly shorter than just playing through and doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, how long did it take you to beat the game? Like, what was your playthrough
I
time?
think I was about 70 hours to my like finishing the main storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at 115 hours now, though.
Yeah. What were you at, Garrett?
It was somewhere close to like 160. something close to that, because I think I did the same thing that you did, and just play through and do all the side quests and all that type of stuff. I tried to get almost all the way to like Gilgamesh and do all that before then, but I'm like, I looked at it and it was like level 65, and I'm like, I don't want to be grinding so much, so I'm gonna go to the final act and just do that. So.
Honestly, I feel like the pacing works really well to just come back and play with all that stuff after you've done the
main
game.
Yeah,
true.
No, it definitely does. I spent the time to finish everything in each section, and it took me about, and I did a lot of the side stuff, but obviously I haven't finished everything. But yeah, it took me about 120 hours to beat the game at that rate. But that's a long game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long game, and it's a lot of game, but it if you're having fun with it, it doesn't like...
No, it didn't feel long.
It doesn't feel long. There are, of course, some times where you feel like, when am I going to fit another playthrough in, essentially?
Yeah, that's going to be my problem. Because Remake, I'll still go back and replay that like once a year, but this one is going to be a little bit more to tackle.
Yeah.
It was interesting, because I think in a developer interview they said, like, if you're just doing the main story, it should only be about like 30 to 40 hours or something like that.
I heard 60.
It can be 60 depending on how you're playing, but I mean, the Grasslands, when I first was playing through that, took me like 15 hours or something like that, and I was doing everything. When I went back and did it the second time, it was I literally got through Calm and the Grasslands within like a matter of like an hour or something like that. So it really wasn't that long of a section. So yeah, it's interesting how it's like, what's really there as far as main scenario quests, you're like, well, then that doesn't mean that, like, for some people would probably think, like, oh, if there's only that much main story, then there really shouldn't be that much else to do elsewhere. But all the other stuff is really cool, too. So, I mean, it doesn't seem small.
The side quests really add to the main quest.
Oh, it does.
They do. So let's go ahead. Episode's getting up there time-wise, so let's go ahead and move into talking about kind of the ending. How we felt about the final sequence, how we feel about what's to come, like what are our hopes and stuff. So
okay, can I start with my complaint
about
go ahead, so Temple of the Ancients? First of all, the dungeon was so long.
It was super long.
It is the final dungeon.
It is the final dungeon, but like pacing wise, they're trying to build up all this, and I'm like, I want to know what happens. And oh my gosh, I have to turn onto the wall now.
Yeah.
It's like, I did feel like I got hung up in there for a little bit too long. It was.
It wasn't my favorite dungeon by any means. It
would have been
long.
fine if it was half as long.
Yeah, and I didn't love the moving of the platforms to go the right direction. It was just a lot.
I didn't mind any of that. It was just too much. It was like, oh, I made it to the end, and now I'm taking back time to go play with the other characters.
There was definitely some things where I was like, okay, you guys are kind of stretching the pacing out of here, especially whenever we kept getting like that little clock thing, and it would turn back, and I'm like, I know it's a reference to Loveless, I get it, but please just kind of stop. But for the most part, I think the design of the dungeon,
it was beautiful.
It's great, and it's one of the one dungeons, and the dungeon design in this game is actually way better than Remake's was.
Yes.
Because Remake was very hallway-esque. This is very exploration heavy. There's a lot of interconnecting stuff. Almost Zelda-like, honestly. It's kind of funny that it's almost like the dungeons from Zelda ended up in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Like, where's the Zelda dungeons playing through, like, Breath of the Wild or something? Oh, they're in this game. Okay. That's what happened.
Yeah, but I really liked the mines. That one was my favorite of the dungeons.
The crystal mines are so good.
Yeah, that was great. I loved it. I definitely think that last segment, it was a little long, but I liked there were some things I really liked, like the Turks coming back. Speaking of, like, I liked the Turk. I just love the Turks.
Yeah.
They're great characters.
They're so well developed in this game too.
Very much so, and I like the somewhat introspectiveness of like even them talking about the events that have happened, and almost having to shut off their brains to just keep working and not think about what they've done,
not to live with the regret of things that have happened before. Yeah.
But Elena was it is Elena, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like her in this game, like, and I think in OG7, like, I was indifferent to her because Reno and Rude were cool and she kind of comes in, but I thought she was really well done in this, and every time you fight her and Rude, the battles were fun, like, and their interactions are great. Like,
I love the sea salt ice cream reference.
I
that
saw
she
that.
has.
That was great.
It was. I'm like, I know exactly what you're doing here. The great. Okay,
Nomura scene.
Yep, exactly. Is it the same? They have the same energy for sure. Yeah. Is it the same voice actress? I don't know.
Probably. I mean, Reno,
they sound similar.
Reno and Axel are clearly.
Yeah, clearly very similar.
They even had the same voice actor up until remake.
Yeah.
But
I like that we finally get to fight Sun, because I don't think you get to fight him in the OG.
Not that I remember.
Sun is just so cool in general.
Yeah. Sun is really cool. He is like the top Turk essentially. So he's the Turk that everybody is trying to be like. So yeah.
Yeah. I was glad that, because I mean they were fleshed out a lot more in remake as well, and like I was really liking them. So I'm glad they kept that going and didn't drop the ball. But just to go back to the Zack stuff too, the scene where you fight, Cloud and Zack fight Sephiroth together back to back.
Like, you're skipping a lot of stuff there.
I know. Like, I skipped a lot, but
there's at least 10 hours between the time.
I have another complaint.
Okay, go ahead and complain, Allie.
Allie has at least 2 more hours of complaints, ladies and gents. No, I'm kidding.
This is still my game of the year, so like these are all very small things.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being critical about something you love, though.
Yeah. Well, if you've noticed, like 2 of my favorite games, I can complain about them quite a bit. Kingdom Hearts 2 being my favorite game.
How did I know it was going to be Kingdom Hearts?
19 years, right? Like,
no one hates Kingdom Hearts more than the Kingdom Hearts fans.
Exactly. I'm like, I can't stand Atlantica and Kingdom Hearts 2.
Oh,
please get that out. But it's like, I'd still say that's like my favorite game. So
this is going back to my whole like narrative focus of the original being so good. The scene after the Temple of the Ancients, when Cloud literally loses it for the first time.
Yeah.
This was one of the moments where, again, they shied away from something darker. In the original, he kind of loses control of himself, and then you control a little child Cloud trying to stop his adult self from doing something.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. That was so powerful because you are no longer in control of Cloud. And you can kind of feel that powerlessness in the fact that they separated you from his body.
Yeah.
They did the wrong thing in Rebirth where they made me control Cloud while I chased Aerith, and that was the most uncomfortable scene ever. I'm like, why did you make me do this? The idea of this is that Cloud is no longer in control. I don't want to be the one pushing the joystick forward.
I did not even think about that, but in that comparison is really well thought out, because the way they had it played out in the OG7, it was really powerful, and I'd forgotten all about that.
I think story-wise, it's definitely more powerful to have them kind of like separated. I think they're still trying to do that thing where it's like, well, you're in control, you're in Cloud's shoes, but to a certain extent, it does kind of
Cloud's not in Cloud's own shoes.
Yeah. Cloud's not, yeah.
Up to this point, even though
Cloud's
it was always a cutscene when he was doing something that didn't feel right for his character, so it wasn't as obvious. But when they made you control Cloud to do that, I don't know. That was the big moment for me.
That is the loss of subtlety right there, where it's like very obvious. Cloud is not who he is saying he is essentially throughout this game. So, yeah, there is a lot of that.
Yeah, and it was very big and over dramatic. In the original, like, he just started beating up Aerith, and Barrett had to conk him over the head to stop it. Like, that was really powerful.
That was like, oh my gosh.
And I mean, I know that they want to make it a little bit more like accessible so that it doesn't feel like it's too dark of a game, but at the same time, by making it this big dramatic Sephiroth thing, I don't know, it lost some of that weight.
Yeah.
It was too loud.
Maybe it was just a little too loud, I'll say.
Again, this is one of those, if it was any other game, I wouldn't have thought about it.
They still go pretty dark. That's the one thing that I think about it. It's like...
But not quietly like they used to.
Not the quiet, like, unspoken darkness that's going on. Yeah,
because the weight of that was you beat up Aerith, and then Barrett smacks you over the head, and then you don't see Aerith again until she's literally getting impaled by Sephiroth. So you're carrying this emotional weight of...
You feel like you
Cloud
separated.
just did something wrong. I tried to stop him from doing it, and I couldn't. And now Aerith has run away from me, and I have to go fix this. And that's kind of the emotion that you carry into the end. And they don't have that anymore. It's kind of...
It's been replaced with a different emotion, essentially. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And... excuse me. This is getting off topic a little bit, but then while you're saying that, it reminded me of something else too, which we didn't really talk about, which is what do they call the guys in the cloaks once they've been...
They don't really have a specific
I think they just
name.
call them the guys in the cloaks.
They're the ex-soldiers, because we learn who they are in this game.
Man, that was very poignant when you learn more about their backstory, like the guy in Column at the beginning.
That was awesome. Like
Broden coming back.
Yeah.
I literally like gasped out loud when I saw him. Like, oh my gosh, they actually did that.
Yeah, that was very powerful. And then when you fight Roche, for the final time, like that got me a little bit too, because his character had grown on me a lot.
And then you can see how Cloud's all shaken up about it, and it definitely lands more emotionally that way. That's one of the things they improved upon from the original.
Yeah, because it's like I said, it's been a while, but I don't remember those. They were just like lemmings, like you see them on occasion when you know you're getting close to Sephiroth or whatever. But they didn't really.
They were more integral in this one. It's like you were following them intentionally, and then when they would have those parallels of like Cloud is very, very similar to them, I should probably be paying attention to that.
Yeah. And then the fact too, like I appreciated that it showed how much like that your friends, and especially Barrett, would be like, get away from that. He's constantly trying to save them from danger,
right,
when they don't have any knowledge of they're zombies basically. But
and then you can shove them in that one quest. Why am I doing this?
You just constantly like, move along.
I'm like, Cloud, you're a little bit rude here.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. Yeah, that they do a pretty good job with that, and I do think when it comes to, you kind of have like you said, they do a really good job, and it kind of goes back to the gamble that they take with revisiting all this and changing some stuff. You either can make moments way more impactful, or you can take away from certain moments, which is always, I think, was people's main criticism of remake. I remember I talked to a friend, and he said he felt that the remake was hollow. I didn't know what he meant by that.
The final music.
The music. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, are you talking about the theme song? Yeah, it's so good. But no, he said it was kind of one of those things. It's like they're just going to do the same things over again, but they're not going to have the same impact or something like that. I'm like, I feel like that's the gamble you always take, though, when you do a remake of this caliber. Like, there's going to be some things that... There's some things that they definitely land on, and they definitely do better than the original, but there's going to be some where you're like, I just prefer how the original did it more. So, yeah.
There's some story beats that I think they should have paid more attention to, like the giant snake being impaled on a tree, or being in control of Cloud when he's doing something. Like, those are less, changing the details of the story, and more just changing what emotion was the player having at that moment.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely what they were doing there, for sure.
Yeah.
And everything had to end in a boss fight. It was
a bit much.
Yeah.
It wasn't always necessary.
I climbed the mountain, and then Elena made me fight a giant robot, and I don't know why.
That is true, yeah.
Yeah.
Elena's like, so while you're here, here's a boss fight.
What if I just wanted to keep walking?
We just happen to have another Valkyrie unit lying around. Let's just throw that in here. Which, okay, I'm just a bit of a nerd for the music of remakes, so hearing that imagining of the theme again, because the Valkyrie music is great, and that one was also great too. So I'm like,
The whole soundtrack was 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's so good.
I bought it the moment it was available to buy, so I was like, yeah.
I know. Have they done a vinyl release for it?
They are going to, but I think the vinyl release is going to be because the thing with the Rebirth soundtrack is so large that not even all the music that they have for the game is in the soundtrack. It's the same thing that happened with Remake, where it's like they couldn't fit all the songs in.
And then they re-released it later with more.
Then they re-released it, yep. So they're going to have to do the same thing with this one.
I was so upset that they left out the music from the, for lack of a better term, the date sequences from the end of Remake.
Oh, yeah.
Those were some of the best.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like there's one song that got me so pumped for the ending of this game, and I can't find it anywhere except really bad YouTube rips of it, and I'm like, But yeah, the vinyl release, I think, is only going to have a selection and be on multiple discs too. Mm-hmm. So there will be an official vinyl release, but we'll have to wait.
Yeah. That's not surprising. I would love to get that, but it'd be cool if they did a full box set, but I'm sure that would be expensive.
They have a box set of what they have right now for...
It's more discs than the main game.
Yeah. I think it's legitimately 7 discs or something like that. Wow. And surprisingly does not cost the amount that I would imagine 7 discs would cost, but yeah. It's available. I have it digitally, so... I know that's a sin on this podcast. Own it physical, everyone.
What is wrong with you?
I know.
I use Spotify.
Well, I think when it comes to music, it's just so much easier to use some kind of streaming platform for music. Okay, so let's move into the conclusion aspect a little bit more. Like I started touching on a little early there, but the overall ending of the game, did you feel like it stuck the landing?
That's a good question because I want to see part 3 before I decide that. Again, this doesn't feel like the end. It feels like a break.
It does, 100%.
I don't like that they made me fight Sephiroth again. I wish they had just done a bigger Genova boss battle.
Yeah.
And left it there. But at the same point, they wouldn't have been able to do the multiversal stuff, so I know they had to if they wanted to play all that out.
There was also a lot of other cool boss. They did it different than remake, because I was wondering, I'm like, how are you going to do this again? Because remake's boss, we fought Sephiroth in remake. How are you going to make us like relive that same moment? And the I don't know, the moment with Zack and Cloud,
it was good.
That's like, okay, all right, I see what they're kind of planning here.
Well, I loved fighting Sephiroth in the quieter version of all the boss fights with Aerith.
Yeah, that was really good. That was really good.
I think I was like in awe when she just stepped out, and I'm like, okay, let's do this.
The emotional impact of that was very well done.
Yeah. And this is not one of the Aeriths we've actually seen before. When she first walks out, the camera pans to show that her hair is still tied up. So it's not the one that he saved, and it's not the one that he failed. This is a completely separate Aerith. And I'm curious how that's going to play into the next game.
How that works, yeah.
It's very interesting. And they added some more questions there as to like what's going to happen in the third game.
Are you talking about the Ultimania that they just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimania has a lot of stuff in there, yeah.
Well, they're not giving us answers. They're just making sure we're asking the right questions.
Yeah, they're basically like, you guys are somewhat on the right track, but we're not going to let you know actually what's going on.
Yeah, the whole end sequence. Well, I also really liked it was when you're fighting Genova, right? When they do the two person battles in the different segments. Like I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah.
Overall, it was. I will say this about the ending. When Remake ended, I felt like I wanted and was excited for the sequel. When Rebirth ended, I felt like I was excited and needed the sequel.
Yes,
absolutely.
So like Rebirth. A remake, I never wanted it to be standalone, but it felt kind of like it kind of worked on its own. This doesn't, like you said, it definitely needs part 3 to conclude it, to really bring it home, because it does feel a little too open-ended.
Rebirth is like 100% a sequel.
I almost wish they had ended it when Sephiroth summons Meteor instead of where it did end.
Yeah.
Because then clearly the entire world would be different.
Right.
It would have made this one way too big because they would have had to have Wutai and Rocket Town and all those things that they kind of cut for now. So I understand why they didn't, but at the same time, I feel like it would have emotionally felt more cohesive to have it end with the world as we know it, and then going into the meteor hanging over the sky version of Midgar.
It is the big query now, because they just set Gaia. So it's like now they are like, well, we kind of ended it at story-wise, it's like you don't have much more of an impactful place to kind of end than that, because you could end it with Sephiroth summoning Meteor.
So hot.
I know. Sephiroth chilling out in Costa del Sol. You can end it there, but it's again the idea it'd be too long, right? The game's already pretty long enough, but
it's like I understand why, but again, coming back to the story writing aspect of it, it's just there was a better place to break it off.
I do think too they want to try and make the next game kind of have that same, maybe even the same length as Rebirth, probably. So there might have been a little bit of that thing of like, we can't end it too late, because then otherwise, well, then we just kind of have a much shorter.
But they're also going to be adding a lot of stuff with like Wutai in the next one. So
they definitely set up.
They're flushing out Wutai a lot, too.
I wanted to go to Wutai in this game. I'm like, Yeah, I was like, I was almost convinced that they were going to do it, and then I'm like, no, they're going to the next game. I'm like, kind of back to what you were saying, Chris. Like, Remake was like, okay, I'm interested to see where the next game goes. If this is all we got, okay, this was amazing. And now this next one, it's like, after you go through the credits and no promises to keep is all done and everything, you're sitting there, you're like, I remember sitting there and I said this to myself because it was like midnight. I'm in my own room and I'm like, I need this next game.
Yes, absolutely.
I need it. I need it now. I'm like looking at my discs. I'm like, where's the next disc? I put it in.
I know. I don't want to wait 4 years.
Yeah. Or I think it's only going to be 3.
Hopefully.
That's what they said.
Yeah. I don't know if the whole Square Enix restructuring things are actually going to, change that. But
I don't think it'll impact this team because what they said was that they kept most of the core staff from Remake to Rebirth, and they're planning on doing the same thing. Like, they have already started quite a lot of the development on Rebirth, and they were on the third one, they were doing it at the same time.
Yeah,
like,
they should be pretty far into it from what it sounds. But.
Yeah. The last thing I heard in the little news snippets about it was that they're about ready to start recording the voiceovers.
Nomura said they were getting pretty close, at least. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so one last thing before we kind of give a little bit of a closing comments that we didn't mention, and that was Sid and Vincent.
Oh, yeah.
And the date with Aerith, y'all are skipping over.
And the best part. The date with Aerith, that's it. You didn't have anybody else.
You can't ignore her.
We can't ignore
We'll touch on that too, actually, because that's pretty pivotal. So I just, real quick with Sid and Vincent, I was honestly surprised they included both of them in the game. I knew we'd probably see Vincent in Shinra Manor, but I didn't think it would be he ended up, I won't say fleshed out, but he ended up having more of a presence than I expected.
I appreciated that because they were doing the same thing with Yuffie, where it's like, you could miss these characters in OG FF7, and it doesn't really impact the story very much, but man, just having them actually get the main character treatment, it feels really good.
And it's nice because they've already started getting you used to them before the final part. So they don't have to spend a ton of time introducing them. Like Red 13 was probably the equivalent of that because they brought him in at the end of the game. You got to know him a little bit, but then he was a full-fledged party member at the beginning of Rebirth. And it feels like Vincent and Sid will probably be the same as that. And I will say, too, I like Sid a lot better from what I've seen of him so far than I did in the original 7.
What do you mean? You don't want him being abusive to Shira all the time? Like OG?
I don't think that they should do it the way they did it in the original, but it was also very jarring for me to have him so different.
He was very different.
At first I was definitely
I'm like, who is this?
Yeah, he's not the same person.
He's not cursing nearly enough to be said.
I mean,
well, he's a disparate.
We're keeping this teen, guys.
I never liked Sid. When I played the original, I never used him on a team because I didn't like him.
He just came in so late in the game that you didn't have time to appreciate him.
That's probably it, and I'm glad they brought him in earlier to kind of help with that. But he had more of he didn't have as much roughness to him at all.
He needs to be a little bit more bitter than he is. Yeah. He doesn't need to be as terrible of a person as he was in the OG, but he's just so happy-go-lucky that I'm like, this isn't Sid.
Maybe they'll flesh that out a little bit more. Because that'd be interesting to see what they do with him.
Because if I remember right, in the original, doesn't he just go along because they kind of steal his plane?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
pretty much.
He's volunteering it here. He's going along. Why is he going along? I'm not quite sure, because he's just nice.
It feels like because they added the background with Aerith's mom.
Yeah, Ilfana and all that.
Yeah, but I mean...
Which feels kind of a little bit forced, honestly, because it's like...
He just wants to help out, guys.
Yeah, he just happened to remember,
you guys just seem cool, and I want to be on your journey. Yeah, that was...
That would have worked in Kingdom Hearts, but it's not Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I feel like they're leaving room to develop Sid, because obviously they're going to
do a lot.
Rocket Town out.
They needed an airplane. Let's be real.
Yeah,
they need an airplane.
I was really surprised when that's who showed up. I don't know why. I know I'm about to fly, but I didn't expect him to come in at that point. It just
and also they broke it, so we were floating around in the ocean like they did in the OG. But now they fixed it again,
and now they're flying. And now,
So why do we need an airship?
I'm confused a little bit about that too. I'm almost wondering if we're gonna crash the tiny Bronco like in the first scene.
This is getting redundant. We already did that.
I know. We're gonna crash it again, and it won't be repairable.
This is when Sid's real bitter journey is gonna start.
He's gonna be like, "You guys made me crash
my tiny Bronco."
Yeah, again. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't really know how they're gonna go about that. Obviously, I'm excited when we get the high wind because that's gonna be really cool. But back to the characters, how they handle them. I just love that they kept the whole thing with Vincent being just so out of touch with current technology and everything that he's like, when Cloud's trying to pass as like some Shinra employee, he's like key card, and he doesn't know it's out of battery. Like, one of the best lines from Advent Children is when Vincent comes in out of nowhere and he's like, "Does anyone know where I can buy a cell phone?" Yeah.
Yeah, it's... So let's just move on from that. Like, final thoughts. Allie, what were your final thoughts on the game? You've said it's a 10 out of 10, but...
My final thoughts are that we're not talking about Aerith date.
Oh, that's right. I'm really trying to move away from the Aerith date, apparently. Okay, let's talk...
Were you all dating Tifa?
I mean, that was my goal from the beginning, so I definitely did.
I'm trying to get the Aerith one on my replay because I'm like.
So your answer is yes.
Yes, I did date Tifa. Yes,
you guys.
But like, there's a lot more. They make Aerith incredibly likable in the remake thing,
and they slightly changed the dialogue in the ending date if you have high affinity with her. If you have high affinity with Tifa, it's more of just like friendly.
Yeah.
Whereas the actual main storyline dialogue changes to be a lot closer in that final sequence where they're in the church in their little like dream world.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it was different till I was reading online and people were like describing the scene. I'm like, that's not how I remember. That's like really distant. And so
I think it's also to try and it makes you as a player, whatever choice you end up making, it fits.
Yeah, there's no canon answer of who he should be with. It's whatever every player wants. But clearly, everyone here is representing Tifa, so I have to talk about my girl Aerith.
No.
Wait, well, nobody picked Barrett?
Apparently, there's also Red 13 and Yuffie as well, but there apparently also is a Ketchi, Vincent and Sid one
like
as
a
well.
bros night on the town.
Like there's that version, which like I don't think you can get on your initial playthrough at all, but they did a lot of great work with that. But since you actually got Aerith, you should speak way more about it, I feel like. So
well, I played the game with the goal of having her as the date. Mm-hmm. So I was obviously catering to her a lot. And one of my also side frustrations, I wish they would have let us just choose which character we were bringing on side quests to increase affinity with them instead of setting one. Because the reason I didn't play all the quests earlier in the game is because I wanted to guarantee that I was only spending my time with Aerith and I didn't accidentally get someone else. So that's just a side point. But for her, I feel like the game feels a lot more cohesive in the last act if you have that set up with Aerith instead of with Tifa. Because if you're with Tifa, it also feels like you're jumping around a little bit here, Cloud. They literally hold hands in the final battle, right?
Cloud's like, I got 2 girlfriends now. I'm great.
Yeah, whereas if you just kind of spend your time with Aerith, it feels a lot more like this is kind of the intended storyline, which we haven't really talked about the whole confusing is Aerith dead or not. But
yeah,
if she is technically written out of the story, which kind of seems like they might go that way, it seems like this was her time to shine narratively.
Oh, yeah.
So I almost feel like they did write it in such a way that it felt more natural if you focused on her. But
yeah.
I mean, obviously I didn't play the Tifa route. But
I mean, if you look at the end credits scene, and it doesn't change if depending on whoever you have the affinity with, all the end credits of like all those optional things in the dates, they're all Aerith. Mm-hmm. So it's clear Aerith is the kind of intended thing, and I think more to your point, if that was the route you went, all those things just have even way more impact, and especially even in the interlude world, you get more of an impactful scene as kind of almost like a little bit of a goodbye from Aerith sending Cloud back. It's like, this hits.
When I was first playing through and I didn't realize there was slightly different versions of that, I'm like, okay, how is anyone going to question that they're the couple or something?
Yeah,
all right. Well, I've represented Aerith, so you guys can finish.
You've done your job. Sorry. Now I need to represent Tifa.
There needs to be more Clareth stand.
If you're going to represent Tifa, then I'm representing Barrett. Let's go. Let's do this.
So Claret.
Claret.
Okay, we're taking a little too far.
Oh, no.
Team Claret.
Team Claret. A clarinet. Okay.
Tifa just sadly sitting on the sideline.
What just happened?
We've gone the complete 180 now.
Oh man. No, I thought that the gold saucer sequence too, just the being able to date. Well, I don't like to use the term date when Yuffie's a child, but
it wasn't a date though.
Yeah, it's more like friends hanging out. But so the partnership, however you want to say it, with each character at Gold Saucer, I think that's really cool. I haven't seen them all, but I like, because in the old one it was just you either got Aerith or Tifa, or if you screwed up everything along the way, you got Barrett.
Yeah, if somehow you astronomically chose things that nobody would have thought, yeah, you get Barrett.
Yeah, and I like that they made it's not as hard to get a different choice or get a different character if you try, and that everybody's kind of an option. So that's cool. It's just more of the fleshing out of the characters and their relationship.
Oh yeah.
All right, but we should conclude the episode though, because we are running long. So final thoughts, Allie.
Final thoughts is that it was a very fun game, and I'm definitely going to be going back to it, and I hope it wins Game of the Year. But I also feel like they botched up a few things from the original that really stuck with me on a story level. So I'm curious to see if they were intentional choices for something they're going to be doing in the next game, or if it was just not quite landing it.
Yeah. And I'll just to piggyback off that, like, you brought some things to my attention that I hadn't given much thought to, that I do see as problems now that we've talked about them more. And there were a few things that they definitely that didn't land as well as they did in the original game. Whereas in Remake, I felt like just about everything was an improvement. There are a few slip-ups along the way. But, cool. That's why.
Hello.
But overall, my time spent with the game, I had fun the whole time. And it's very rare that I spend this much time in a game that is story-based, I guess, and I enjoy it from beginning to end. So 120 plus hours of doing side quests. Like, there were a few things, obviously, that I didn't love, like I said. Like, some of the mini-games got a little obnoxious. But overall, the story, I really enjoyed it. The characters, the interactions were so much better than I could have ever hoped for.
Yeah.
They've really grown, each character. The side characters have a lot more growth and a lot more personality. The music's fantastic. I loved it. I mean, I do also look forward to playing it again. Probably this year I'll go back and try to clean up stuff for the Platinum Trophy. But I want to clean up the rest of my playthrough and finish Odin and Gilgamesh and the stuff that I haven't done, and do my hard playthrough this year. But I loved it. I'm excited for 3. I hope that it just ties it all up and makes it all very cohesive. I was nervous when this coming out that they might not be able to continue it. You know, I thought Remake was so perfect that they might drop the ball, and I feel like overall they did a good job of continuing it.
And with all the things that I think they didn't quite get, I can see the trajectory of where the third game is just going to be incredible. They're going to have it all finally polished to perfection.
All of their thoughts will be able to come to conclusion.
And no matter what the ending is, I know because they're going for an actual ending, it's not stopping in the middle. Whatever it is, it's going to leave me reeling. I know that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I just echo the same thought. I think that is definitely what we're all looking forward to. We're all looking forward to seeing this sort of finality. And the interesting part of this kind of all being almost like a pseudo sequel to the original game is we finally we kind of wonder what state is Gaia going to be in after all of this happens. I'm not oh man, I gotta have the next game right after the third one. It's no, it's just we're going to be in a different place than where we were at the end of the original game, and also technically where we were at the end of Advent Children, right? So,
well, they've said that the plot of this isn't going to deviate so greatly that it doesn't connect to Advent Children.
Yeah.
Which, after they said something in one of their recent little interviews about they might be open to doing more games after they finish the remake trilogy in the Final Fantasy VII universe, and I'm Advent Children game 1?
Yeah, that would be cool.
I feel like it will. I feel like we might get an Advent Children moment in the next game. I think it's likely.
I think it would make a really good game. Now, I was kind of thinking about it earlier. It would be a really cool sequel as a game instead of just as a movie.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know what they're going to do. I feel like giving us a new sort of direction afterwards probably going to be the best thing they can do. I've already kind of sung this game's praises quite a bit enough. I mean, even to the point where I said that this game overtook my number 1 favorite game of all time. Yeah, I can acknowledge the the problems with it, but the things that this game does so right, in the culmination of it and all as a complete package is like, it's one of the best games I've ever played. Honestly, is it objectively the best game I've ever played? Maybe not, but subjectively, this is one of my all-time favorites.
I mean, if we're talking enjoyment level, even with the little things I'm comparing to the original, my enjoyment level for this game was much higher than anything I've played in a long time. And that's saying a lot. Like, I've got over 30 hours of post-finishing the main game content that I've been working through, and usually I lose my attention span after the final boss. This one has just so much going for it that I'm not bored coming back at the end.
Yeah, that's me too. It's very rare. Usually I finish a game, it doesn't matter, even if there's DLC and stuff, like, unless I absolutely loved it, I probably never play the DLC. Like Spider-Man 1's a good example of that. It's a fun game, never played the DLC. I didn't need to. But with this, like, I look forward to going back and doing the extra stuff. I look forward to doing another playthrough. And those, to me, are some of the best games when I actually look forward to playing it again. Because I have a relatively big collection of games, and I don't always, some of them I think maybe I'll play again in the future. But this is a game like I look forward to playing again right away, and I look forward to playing it again at least at some point before the final part comes out. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was, the month of March was a blur. I did get COVID for part of it, so I guess that helped with my downtime playing the game. But
your overall life expectancy may have taken a downturn, but hey, you finished Rebirth.
Yeah, man, I
quality of life was improved.
Literally didn't do anything in March, like other than I worked and played Rebirth, like because I spent a lot of it sick too, like I said. So, but I don't regret it. Like I had a lot of fun. Like I don't even know how I spent so much time in it. It felt so quick. So, yeah, I loved it, and I'm excited for what's to come. I just don't want to have to wait.
Okay, final opinion. Is Aerith actually there when Cloud sees her at the end, or is he hallucinating her? Just throwing your bets now, because there's literally no way to know.
There is literally no way to know.
I lean towards he was hallucinating or just seeing her in his head.
Yeah, I think the way that they're going with Cloud and just how far gone they're kind of trying to make him, I feel like there's a very strong... Also, too, if you've been paying attention to Aerith's, like, voice lines, she doesn't have any, like, brand new voice lines until, like, the very last sentence she, like, starts talking to, like, Cloud about. So there's some evidence, but, again, there's always other things going on, too, and you're like, you're never going to know.
I mean, he's seeing the torn sky, so it's like, is he seeing an alternate reality?
Yeah,
is he hallucinating Aerith?
And
clearly, she's dead to everyone else.
And Nanaki senses her too, so it's like, oh man, it could be so many different things we don't really know. So,
but yeah, I definitely think they're gonna go with the breaking Cloud's psyche one last time by having him realize that she's not here. So whether or not she's here in some sort of like alternate timeline form, or if she's actually just being hallucinated, she's not in this world, so they're going to play on that somehow.
That's what I would agree with the most, is maybe she exists somewhere but not here.
The biggest proponent of that is we've got almost everything about the end scene of Aerith dying pretty much down except for one scene, and it's pivotal, and they noticeably cut after to it. We don't see Cloud lowering Aerith into the water. They purposefully leave that out, and it's like, that to me is strong evidence of anything of like Cloud somewhat hallucinating a bit. It might be an answer of all three. Is it Cloud hallucinating, and is it Aerith being kind of like a force ghost, or is it Genova manipulating stuff? We don't know. It could be all three.
Just forgotten it because it was traumatic, and like he's living in his own little daydream. Because everyone else was sitting sadly on the side of the water, like something big just went down. They clearly didn't leave her sitting up alone on that platform. So I think that we're going to get that scene in the next game is a flashback where Cloud remembers, oh my gosh, that happened.
It's definitely going to be part of the live stream sequence in the next game for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a lot to look forward to.
2027, man.
Here we come.
It'll be there before we know it.
Yeah, it's true. Time goes too quick sometimes. So thank you both for coming on, for talking, for opening my eyes to some things I didn't see.
Thanks for letting me gripe.
No, for sure.
No, I loved it. Hopefully I didn't come across as too negative. I love it so much that I notice everything.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. What you did was just you found every detail and you detailed it. Yeah, it was deep. I'm here all day, guys. No, you were being honest with it, and that sometimes is hard to do with things we love, and I appreciate that, because I sometimes I'm the opposite, and I don't nitpick enough, and I'm like, wow, I love everything, yay, and then but I like seeing other opinions and hearing that stuff because it helps me look at it from a different perspective. The only thing I wish about this episode is that maybe we had done it like a month ago. So while it was a little fresher in my head.
It would have been so much longer, though, because we would have remembered so much more.
Exactly. So maybe it's not. Maybe it's better we waited.
We would have had the 6-hour long X Button Gaming episode.
Yeah.
We're going to make it into a trilogy, part 1.
Yeah. Oh, we'll be back. Yeah, no, if we'd done it longer, I definitely had more to say, but as time has gone on, my brain has pushed a lot of it. But as we were talking, there's always like, oh, we didn't talk about this yet. Oh, there's that thing that I forgot. You know, so. But no,
we didn't talk about Kid G.
Not at all. Then I hated the minigame. We could do a whole nother episode talking about the stuff we've forgotten to talk about. We spent almost no time talking about the summons. There's a lot of things.
We'll call it the reunion episode.
Yeah,
the reunion. Yeah.
Amen. So, but thank you guys. I do appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you both on again, for other topics or whatever. So hopefully you had fun.
I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah. You want to plug your Instagram one more time?
Oh, yeah. Allowaya Art. ALLYWAIA _art.
Gary, you have an Instagram you want to plug?
YouTube
channel?
No. I do have a YouTube channel, but I don't upload to it anymore. So
okay.
Yeah. I'll let people in the wild find that one out.
So we have to try to investigate and find Gary's YouTube channel.
It's a challenge now. We dare you to find his YouTube.
Look up Legendary and maybe look up a video about should you play ARMS in 2022 or something like that.
I do want to find
that. That was like the most viewed video that I had. So yeah, there was something along those lines.
I'm going to find that. I'm going to post it to my Instagram.
You will probably, yeah. You're going to see a probably clean-shaven Gary from like years
cleaner,
ago,
happier Gary.
Happier, much happier.
Less jaded. Then he played ARMS, so now he's a different man.
ARMS changes you, man.
Man. No, well, thank you guys very much. So we'll go ahead and conclude here. So just remember, you can follow me on Instagram at XButton Gaming or on Twitter /X at XButtonGaming1. I am trying to post more. I post a lot more on Twitter these days because it's easy. I find that it's really easy to post on there and just like share pictures and stuff and not feel a lot of pressure. But apparently that's just me being stupid. Okay, but yeah, remember to follow me wherever and like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And remember to always press X to continue.